Checkpoints, the Video Game Book Club podcast. Today we're discussing Trauma Team. I'm your host Marqus, and joining me today, as always, are the homies. First up, we have Greg.
What's up?
What's up, man? Next, we got the homie Trevor.
What's going on?
Not much. And last but not least, we got the homie Dante.
Ready to operate.
Well, this is Dante's game for the month of September, so I will let him take it away.
All right, so our game this time is Trauma Team. And Trauma Team, it's known as Hospital Six Doctors in Japan, is a simulation / visual novel surgery game. And it was developed and published by Atlas. The game was released for the Wii on May 18th, 2010. And as of now, there have been no ports or remasters of this game on any other system. So we all had to figure out some way to hook up a Wii or a Wii emulator. So first motion control game I think we've done. And Atlas is best known for the Shin Megami Tensei series, especially the Persona brand of games in the West. So Trauma Team is a spin-off, and it's also the last entry in the Trauma Center series. Development began back in 2007. The team wanted to add variety to the series' typical gameplay. Most of the other games, you just play as a doctor and you're doing operations the entire time. But as a result of that, they got the idea of having different medical specialists, and they implemented that into this game. The 6 different doctors all play different roles in the medical process, and for that reason, they all play vastly different from one another for the most part. Another key change was the decision to make a more grounded tone with the game story. So while previous entries in the Trauma Center series had a lot of paranormal viruses and just stuff that isn't really based in reality, this game had a more, bigger emphasis on real-world diseases. And its plot was actually directly influenced by the 2009 swine flu pandemic. And like Trauma Center New Blood before it, it also, in addition to a single-player campaign, offers a cooperative multiplayer option. The game received an 8.2 average on Metacritic, but overall was considered a very, very bad sales failure, possibly leading to the end of the franchise as a whole. During that period, like the 2009, 2008, that was kind of past the Wii's heyday. So while the Wii had sold a lot of units up till then, a lot of non-Nintendo games, no matter how good they were, just did not sell on that console unless they were like specifically party games. And Atlas expected more from the sales of Trauma Team, and an episode of a live-action series was actually developed before the game, got released. But ultimately, the series was canned because of the very low sales of the game, from my understanding. And I think it was either 2 or 3 years ago, the pilot for that show actually made its way onto YouTube. And I sent the link out to the crew. I didn't actually get a chance to watch it. I've been busy. So that'll probably be like the first thing I do after this podcast. Let's see. So let's go into everybody's, general history with Atlas and the Trauma Team franchise. So let's see. Marcus, do you have any history with Atlas, the developer, or the Trauma series?
So a little bit of Atlas history. I'm pretty sure they did I think it was like a dodgeball for Game Boy Advance game that
Super
I played.
Dodgeball. Yep.
Yep, I played that, and obviously we played Catherine for the podcast. And I've been playing Guilty Gear Strive lately, which is another Atlas joint. And I had Guilty Gear Zerd as well, but I think that's really about it. I have interest after speaking with you about, is it Danganronpa? Is that an Atlas joint?
Danganronpa is, let me see who that is. I know it's not Atlas. It is Spike Chunsoft.
Okay,
Hold
then
on. Is Strive a Atlas game? I thought that was Namco Bandai.
you know what?
Guilty Gear?
Yeah.
I thought it
That's
was.
Namco. I'd like to say.
Damn, call me out. Then yeah, only Catherine then and the dodgeball game.
You played a small amount of Trauma Center. I believe it was New Blood in college with me.
Yeah, and I have
Very small amount.
no recollection of that, but I do believe you. I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember that at all. So yeah, I don't really have a ton of history with Atlas, and obviously, I don't even remember. Like, I remember you.
Any
being-
snowboard kids in your past?
Nope.
Oh, man.
I remember you being a fan of the Trauma Center franchise.
Correct.
And I remember you talking about it in college, but I was a not well versed gamer back then, so I was just kind of like, oh, that's just Dante and his like weird Japanese games that he plays. I'll pay him no mind. So yeah,
A decade later.
look at me now. You were just the head of your time, man. That was one of the things I wanted to tell you. Is I appreciate the you played a lot of different games that I normally wouldn't have played and exposed me. And I was like, man, that's crazy that you were like way into this stuff. Like,
Let's have a moment right now. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for opening up your mind and seeing the light.
yeah,
What
yeah,
can I say?
Yeah. So I definitely, it took me a while, but I see the light now, and I was like, dang, like, I mean, back then I was playing like shooters and, you know, like the AAA games, and here's Dante playing like all these like I would consider more niche games, but like they're games that now click with me. So yeah, he was ahead of his time, that Dante.
See, now all me and Greg have to do is talk you into Persona. And
Honestly, like I have a bunch of friends that are into Persona, and I remember the Persona fighting game. Like I had a bunch of friends that played that, and I didn't play it, but like Persona seems cool from what I've seen. I would like this is Kanji, the dude with the chair, or
Yep.
what's the chick with the skirt, with the bowl cut. I can't remember her name. She's
Naoto?
I think so.
Blue hair?
No, brown hair.
Or no, you're talking Chie, sorry.
Chie, yes. Chie and Kanji. I feel like I would like both of those characters.
Persona 4, man. You've heard a lot about it from Giant Bomb. I know.
And I have a friend that like he's like the evangelist for Persona 5. So
It's a great game. But let me see. I had two questions for you. Okay. And you played on the Wii, just proper Wii.
I played it on the Wii. I ended up getting off eBay.
Okay. Now, Greg, what's your history with Atlas, and have you played any Trauma Center games? I know you've touched a lot of games over your years.
So I've played whatever the first one that was that came out on DS. I played a little bit of that. I didn't make it too far into it. For Atlas games, I feel like there's too many to name that I've played. I mean, I've played the Persona series, so I mean, I guess that's like the most important out of, I guess from them.
Catherine is the most important.
I mean, that's debatable, but yeah, I mean, I played a lot of Atlas games, like I don't know, Odin Sphere, isn't that one of them too? I'm thinking of.
I'd like to say so. See, there's a lot of games that are Atlas adjacent that are kind of messing us up right now.
Yeah.
And kind of exposing me because I'm like, I think that was Atlas, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, that was Atlas in Vanillaware.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I play a lot of their RPGs, and you know, I think Disgaea was part of it too. That's another one. But either way, yeah, I've played a lot of their stuff. So
Cool. And how did you play Trauma Team?
so I played via Dolphin Emulator.
Okay, cool. And did that work pretty well for you?
Outside of the audio stuff, because I could never get there's some specific missions that use the Wii Remote speaker. Yeah. So outside of that.
Without jumping too far ahead, I didn't realize this until later. You're talking about the Gabriel stuff, right? Where you're diagnosing people?
Mm-hmm.
No.
If you go to the top right corner, you can have the audio come through the TV instead of the...
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't find that out until like halfway through, to be perfectly honest. And I was just looking at the sound waves.
Yeah, I was just looking at the sound waves, comparing that way instead of doing the audio. But yeah, that would have been nice.
Yeah. Cool. Trevor, how about you? What's your history with Atlas and the Trauma Center series in specific?
I had never heard of this game until you put it on the list. And
Man,
My history with
now you can
Atlas.
empathize with the rest of us about your games.
Got him.
Let's go. I'm just playing. Hyper Light Drifter's okay.
But yeah, Trauma Team or the Trauma Center series. Like I said, never heard of it before. And Atlas, I've only played Catherine. I was actually looking at the list, and I'm guessing they're like a publisher too.
Yeah, they're a developer / publisher.
So, because they've got a long list of games, the majority of which they've developed, but they've also published a ton of games too. But the only one I see on here that I recognize is Catherine.
No Dragon's Crown?
Never heard of it.
Okay. Greg knows what's up. So, for myself... Oh, also, what did you play it on, Trevor? Sorry.
I played on Wii.
Wii or Wii U?
Wii.
Okay, just regular Wii.
Wii.
All right. And myself, I played it also via Dolphin, even though I own the game for the original Wii. It just was a little bit easier for me to set that up, and I also wanted to stream it a little bit, so ended up doing a little bit of that. And my history with Atlas, like Marqus, I played Dodgeball Advance. That was probably honestly before that there were Snowboard Kids. I played Snowboard Kids. Then I'd say I played a little bit of Dodgeball Advance. And then much later, I'd say almost a decade later, I got into the Persona series and played Persona 4, played Persona 5, played Catherine, and of course the Trauma Center series. That happened somewhere in there, and I've played the original. There's Trauma Center 2 for the DS. There's Second Opinion, which was a Wii port of the original game. There's New Blood, which is pretty much like a completely original Trauma Center game. And then there's Trauma Team. And I've played all of those start to finish. So I have a pretty big history with those. I'm actually about halfway through an Atlas game right now, Persona 5 Strikers, which I just looked it up. It has the same director as this game. So this is what the Trauma Team director is up to nowadays. He's making Muso / Dynasty Warrior Persona games, which this one's actually very good. I'm normally very reductive on the Dynasty Warriors franchise, but that one is pretty decent, to be perfectly honest.
We love a decent game.
I'm saying it's better than decent, but you know. Let's see. All right, so before we start talking about the game proper, I want to kind of go into the premise and the basic story of the game. So before we even talk about the story, I want to get this through everybody's head, because the way they do the story is a little bit different than most other games. So the story of Trauma Team is split between 6 different campaigns. And on the character select screen, each character is represented by a vertical column. The player has the choice of going through each column one by one and just doing every character's campaign separately. But if they go row by row, you experience the events of the game in a mostly sequential order. There's a couple things that are roughly the same time, and like, even though, you know, character 1 is in column 1 or whatever, and then character 2 is 2 columns down, they might have 2 events on the same row, but that second character's event might happen before the first character's, but they roughly happen at the same time. So generally speaking, if you want to experience the story in the proper order, you go row by row. And let's see. The story takes place in modern day United States, a fictional version of it, mostly fictional, even though they use actual locations. And then a majority of the playable doctors already work at Resurgam First Care when the game begins. That's kind of like the main hospital center that a lot of them are based off of. And there are 2 exceptions to that. There's CRSO1, who is a prisoner, and Naomi Kimishima, who's a coroner for the Cumberland Institute of forensic medicine. And to jump into the intro, the opening cinematic has a girl who appears to be deceased in the middle of the field with flowers, and you see some butterflies around her. And quickly after that, the game kind of just opens up in a kind of like, I was about to say CSI style, but one of those medical shows where they have like the TV intro and it's like, oh, this person's on the ambulance and this person's in the middle of surgery and this person's doing this. So it kind of gives you a very quick view into a couple of the doctors right there. Okay. So this game's a little bit interesting to cover because you can technically approach it in any way you want, so you don't have to play things sequentially. I think the best thing to do here is figure out who played what. So I know for a fact Marcus and I completed the game. Trevor, how far did you get?
I completed everybody's stories except for Tomoe.
Okay. Cool enough. And Greg, how far did you get?
So I did all the missions for the first 3 characters, and then for the last 3, I think I did 4 of Tomoe's. I'm drawing a blank on the other 2.
Gabriel is a diagnostician.
Okay, so I think I did all but one of his, and then only did one of
Naomi.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough. So, as you heard right there, you can tackle the characters in any order you want. Every character has these base missions. There's roughly, I'd say, 5 per character. If you complete all of those with all the base characters, you unleash or unlock a final story where you go through about maybe, I'd say, 10 more missions. And those are happening in sequential order at that point. You can't go out of order.
I was gonna say that it is. I want to say by my count, because I wrote it down, it was 42 main story missions, and then there was they added another 14 after you completed those initial 42, so 56 total missions.
I wonder if that counts the events and stuff, because that seems high.
It does.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. So my thoughts were just tackling characters one by one, and then at the end we kind of wrap them all together. I think that's going to make the most sense.
That sounds cool.
Cool. So let's start with sorry, there is a fly that's annoying me. CRSO1. He is a prisoner who his main role in the hospital is, I guess, a surgeon specialist. And one thing that I did note for every character is their voice actor, because they have a lot of really famous, prominent video game voice actors in this game. So he actually is voiced by Nolan North, who is known for Uncharted. He's Nathan Drake there. Plays a lot of other characters in just video games, so I know everybody here has at least heard him in something or another. Let me just really quickly look at his IMDb again. While I'm doing that, let's jump into some of the traits and kind of basic background of CRS. So this guy, he is kind of your typical quiet, mysterious amnesia anime character. Very quiet and aloof. And his background is, when you see your first scene with him, you find out that he has a 250-year prison sentence, and he has this giant, like, Iron Maiden-esque helmet over his head when you first find him. And pretty much, they go to him and they're like, hey, we know you have this 250-year sentence, but what if we shaved off like 14 of those years if you do this surgery for us? So he accepts, and that kind of starts his campaign, so to speak. So what did you guys think of trying to think about if I want to talk about his character or gameplay first. Let's go with the gameplay first. So CRS, he is a surgeon. And most of the surgeries, you have a set amount of tools. You have sutures. You have a scanner, like a sonar scanner. You have a drain. You've got vials of medicine that you can use. Got a couple other things as well. And then you're using those and switching between those with the left thumbstick on the nunchuck of the Wii Remote. And then using the Wii Remote itself, you're pointing at the screen and doing certain actions. So typical thing that you would do at the beginning of a, CRS mission is use healing gel to disinfect an area on the patient's skin. And then you pull out your scalpel, you have to cut it. Then from there, you go in, you do some stuff. You have to suture them up at the end, so on and so forth. And that's kind of like the basis of his gameplay. What did you guys think of the basic surgery gameplay for CSR or CRS?
So he was the first one. I ended up doing what you said and going in order. I'm sorry, the story order, but I played his missions first, so I did his first 4. So he was the first character I started with before I realized I should play this in, story order or whatever. And one of the things that first struck me was I was like, oh man, they're very, very, it was overwhelming at first because I was like, there's a lot going on. And I'm like, I hope I don't have to remember this, because I was thinking that the first mission was just going to be a tutorial and then I was kind of on my own. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that struck me was I was very happy that the game walked you through it the entire time. And his gameplay, I was a little bit worried about some of the precision because I just haven't played a Wii game in a long ass time. So I was concerned that, oh shoot, I'm not gonna be able to hit these things as accurately as I need to. And I didn't have any issues with that. But his gameplay I thought was pretty fun, and I can definitely see why he is he's a returning character, and I can definitely see I had a lot of fun with his gameplay, and I could understand.
He's actually not a returning character.
Well, I'm sorry, not him as a character, but that gameplay.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, from what I read,
there is one returning character, and we'll get into that later. But
from what I read, this is what Trauma Center was the general surgery gameplay. So the other characters, other specialists were new to the franchise or to the series, right?
Correct.
So I was like, this is really fun. I get it why this is a series and not just a one-off game, because this is pretty fun. So that was my main takeaway with his stuff. Okay,
and what do you think about the different tools that you were using? Did you have any tools that, I know this is kind of a very specific question, but any tools that annoyed you of his? Any tools that you liked?
I really liked. I mean, his were pretty general, basic, and I felt like it was once you. It was nice that I started with him because I felt like all the things. I don't remember there being anything unique to him. I feel like everything that you did with him, you would do with another character. I think that was the case. I think maybe my favorite thing was the sewing them back up, just doing the zigzag thing. I don't know, that was
the suturing.
Yeah, that was always very comforting. I don't know why. It was just fun to do that back and forth thing. So yeah, that was.
Is it good until they give you a good and you're like, man, I know I did that cool.
Yeah, exactly.
That was another thing I did want to bring up, and it was kind of separate from everything. So 4 of the characters have more traditional gameplay, as in you're kind of on a time limit. Your patient has essentially a health meter that you can inject them with stuff to bring it back up, but then also things happen to them, like a tumor might burst and then their health or vitals go down. So you have your traditional game over states, and those are based off of reflexes and kind of just physical skill, I guess. Whereas 2 people that we'll go into later, they have more of a visual novel-esque type gameplay. So one of them will, both of them, you're talking to people, you're trying to find out clues, you're trying to present evidence and whatnot. And if you present the wrong evidence or give the wrong diagnostic, then you lose a heart out of like 5 or 6 hearts. So that's kind of how the game is broken up. All of the, I guess, skill / reaction based gameplay is ranked. So you can get, I've never gotten anything lower than a C. Did anybody else get anything lower than a C?
That might be the lowest, yeah. Because
I think
like
C is the lowest.
When I wasn't even doing great, sometimes I would still get a C, and it's like, all right, well, maybe that's the lowest they have.
Yeah, so it goes from C up to S in the normal difficulty, but then if you go to specialist, then you can get up to XS, which, oh my god. That is something for you guys to look up. I might even find a little YouTube video for you guys to see what like an XS surgery is in this game, because like I love some difficult games. Trauma Center, I think it was it was Second Opinion, is one of the few games I've ever had to drop down to easy difficulty just because, like, the base version of this series is incredibly hard. Like, Atlas games are known for being very hard sometimes. And some of the stuff they ask you to do and some of the speed, like the speed they ask you to do it in precision, it's just insane. People like, I was looking at a walkthrough for how to get XSs on some of these missions, and they're like, okay, you pretty much have to have your pointer right here at this exact time. Make sure you hit A within like 0.5 seconds, or else you might as well restart, because they are just that down to the wire with that stuff. But essentially, all of that was to say every mission with the first 4 doctors is ranked. So you can get bad, good, or cool on any, not every single action you do, but on a lot of key actions, they will give you a ranking, and those go into your overall score. Sorry for cutting you off with that. Trying to think if there was anything else you want to say, Marcus, on the tools or gameplay first. CR?
No, I think I pretty much covered it. I'm interested to see what Trevor and Greg have to say.
Yeah, what do you guys think about the basic controls of gameplay, the tools of CR? Either one of you can answer.
Well, just on basic gameplay, and this is with any character in general. I thought there was something wrong with my Wii controller at first, because I never actually had a Wii, or I had one, but it was never like mine. Like, my mom bought a Wii so she could play like the fitness games on it, and my wife has a Wii, but she uses it for her classroom that she teaches. So I've never like directly owned a Wii and never really played any Wii games. So I wasn't used to how jittery the Wiimote is, like the little cursor on the Wii. Like, I was thinking,
it's precise. If you're shaking your hand even a little bit, it's going to pick it up.
I was thinking it was like it wasn't going to be that sensitive to where, like, if I'm sitting still, like with my elbow resting on the armrest, like, it shouldn't be moving at all. But I mean, it picks up just like the tiniest bit of movements. But like, I tried to calibrate the Wiimote, and I was doing all sorts of things, and I was just like, you know what, just let me play this game and see how it actually plays. But other than that, I didn't have any problems with the controls. I think Marcus mentioned when he first started playing the inmate CR-S01, and he mentioned that it was the first character he played as. That was actually the last character I played as. But I enjoyed.
Because you were going in order, right?
No, I think I started with Tomoe, and then I put the game down. I put the game down for like a week. And then I was like, you know what, then I went to Gabriel, and then I finished all of Gabriel's, then I went to Naomi, finished all of Naomi's, and then I started, jumping around to the other ones, or jumping over to Moy and just playing the other doctors. But I actually played CR last, and there was no real rhyme or reason to why I played him last, but I was just like Marcus. I thought I would be overwhelmed by the amount of tools that he has at his disposal. But you kind of get used to it fairly quickly. And the only thing I didn't like about the controls, like using his tools, like there's one, the ultrasound device that you have that allows you to move around.
Mm-hmm.
That one kept confusing me because there are a couple of tools where you have to hold the nunchuck direction down while you're using the tool, but then there's other ones where you can just navigate to it and then release it, and it still uses the tool.
Wait, what?
You're getting ahead. You're getting ahead, Trevor, because I
Am
don't
I
think
really?
that was with him. I thought it was more with Tomoe, but what he's
Yeah.
saying is I think it was the Wii, the
Because
nunchuck.
with
Yeah.
nunchuck with him, you literally just use a directional pad.
Yeah, but I think it was just for the ultrasound tool, like how you move around on the screen.
You use the back of the Wii remote, the B on the back of the Wii remote to do it.
Wait, what?
The B button on the back
B
of the Wii
button
remote.
on the back of the Wii remote. Did you think it was the Z? Do you think it's like?
Do you have a
I'm
bootleg?
saying I don't know what was going on. It's a third party nunchuck attached to a genuine Nintendo Wii remote. So maybe that was the issue.
I mean, regardless, there's a button on the back of the Wii remote, and you hold that, and that's how you.
I thought you had to navigate to the ultrasound tool in order to move around the screen. Like if
You
you're
do, but
doing a
that's
large
just
operation.
down left on the Wii, the nunchuck.
Yeah, and you have to hold it, don't you?
No, you don't.
No.
Oh, for some reason, whenever I would release it, it would switch to a different tool.
That's a problem.
Yeah,
I can see how that's annoying.
We were playing. Me and Trevor, he was over, and we ended up playing some of the co-op just to see what it was like. And he was like specifically with CR's co-op mission that we did. It required a lot of scanning, and he was struggling because he had the tool to scan and do the initial incision. So I think the issue that he kept running into was that he was holding the button down and it kept giving him audio like, and he was thinking that was the thing scanning when in actuality it wasn't. So he kept struggling with that, where I think in actuality with that scanner, you just need to hover it over something. And then once you see something, then you hit the button to like lock it in.
Correct. You cover over it, you'll see a shadow, and then you hit the B on the back of the Wii remote to confirm.
Yeah, and he was thinking that it wasn't doing anything until he hit the button.
Oh.
So he was
No, it's doing a passive scan, and then you just have to confirm the scan.
and that was the issue that he was having. So he kept
So, for my own education, what was the co-op experience like for CR?
Well, I would be able to tell you that we did co-op for every character that could, except for Tomoe. For CR,
And she's probably the one that would benefit most from it if it's anything similar to the other games.
well, I read what hers is, and it is so underwhelming. But with CR, just imagine. I'm talking to the listener. You have like a tool of 8 tool, or you have a round wheel of like 8 or 9 tools. The left half player 1 has, the right half player 2 has. So Trevor could do like I don't remember what exactly the position, but he could do the incision, he could do the scanning, he could do the suturing. I could do the injections, I could do the draining, and I could do the bandaging. So we kind of had to like talk to each other and like, okay, I need this or this, and we only did like one mission per character just because we wanted to get a feel for how it was. But by the end, I think we had like a good like little workflow going where we weren't even like talking and saying what we were doing because you could see each other's cursor, so we knew where each other was at. So I could like, oh, I'm gonna inject here. He knows that he needs to apply the antibodies or whatever thing there, and then I'm injecting here, and vice versa. So like it was pretty seamless. It was fun. It was definitely fun. At least his was fun.
That's interesting because maybe I'm misremembering how it was done in New Blood. New Blood was the only other Trauma Center game that had co-op, I'd like to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say they just split it up between, like, one player had the Wii remote and then the other player had the nunchuck. And essentially, like, one player would be changing the tools and then the other player would be actually acting on the tools.
No. So for this, we both had the Wii remote with the nunchuck. So we both had those, and we had our own independent wheel. But again, I was locked out of the left side. He was locked out of the right side. Just to say, his was probably my second favorite of the three we played.
Okay, cool. Huh, that's interesting. I'll have to double check on okay, I'm reading a GameFAQs post and hopefully this is accurate for the New Blood co-op. You can play any mode with only the Wiimote, but it makes switching tools awkward. Press up. Okay, so maybe both players did have it and you could just kind of operate on the same patient at the same time. It's been so long since I've done it.
Gotcha.
So that mostly covers up the basic gameplay. I guess just to paint the listener a better picture, like I said, you open up the patient, use a scalpel to cut them open. You can either potentially scan for tumors and excise them. You might be draining fluids from them. You might be using a laser to break up a stone of some sort, like a kidney stone or whatever.
Cutting out a tumor.
Exactly. So and occasionally you'll also get special tools that aren't on your little circular thing. So for example, when you're bandaging the patient up at the end of the operation, there's a special button that comes up on screen and you have to hit that. Occasionally, a patient might lose their heartbeat or whatever, and you'll have to use the little shock tool to resuscitate them, do stuff like that. And that's kind of the basics. So did you have any favorite levels with CRS? Any least favorite? This is open to anybody.
I honestly, like, the one thing I will say is I ran through this game, so like I would say the later missions kind of stood out to me with him. Excuse me, the later missions just in general stood out. I don't really remember a lot of his things. I just thought the concept was very interesting. Where it's like, yeah, this dude has a 250-year sentence, and you don't really. He doesn't remember what happens. People are like kind of talking around it, and you just know that he's trying. He doesn't know what he's doing. I will say it's like he's just kind of seems to be kind of lackadaisical, going with the flow. I don't think he like cares about the getting 5 years knocked off his sentence every time he does a surgery. I don't think that really matters to him because I think he's resigned to thinking that I'm just gonna rot in jail for the rest of my life. And so like I think the character stuff is more interesting for me personally than like his like mission stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. And I even wrote down like kind of the basic character arc for every character, because one thing I do like about this game, and you guys can agree or disagree, like I felt like every character had a pretty good story arc or character development. And his arc was mostly about like finding purpose in his life again, and also atoning for this crime that he doesn't have any memory of, but still feels guilt for. So that's pretty much like the whole jumping off point of his story. And we'll go into story a little bit later, but
yeah, I was going to ask,
Greg,
but I guess we'll get into that later. I was just wondering if they ever resolved that in the latter missions.
100%.
Okay.
Any questions you could have possibly had about this game, they get resolved. They throw 2 Naomi missions at you near the end, so everything, all that exposition that you want. So Greg, Trevor, did you guys have a favorite or least favorite level with CR that stood out potentially?
Um, I can't think of any specifics. I mean, I think the thing that I did kind of appreciate is like once you get towards the end of the each of the campaigns, I guess that revolve around like surgery. I guess is they kind of throw more at you, or like throw or try and throw more curveballs in towards in those ones. So I kind of appreciated that, but yeah, I don't think there's any like specifics.
This game does a good job, in my opinion, of keeping things relatively fresh, even for every character. So, like, even if you get comfortable with the tools, they'll give you scenarios where, oh, well, I didn't think I'd have to use a tool for this, or, oh, well, I was used to taking care of this one thing, but now this other complication is happening, and now I kind of have to micromanage my time between fixing this one thing while keeping this other thing at bay. Any thoughts on the character, just in general?
What was the question again?
Just any general thoughts, like, do you like CRS as a character?
Um, the character itself had a lot more depth than I thought it would. I like my bad. I had to step away for a second, but one of your questions was like, do we have any favorite levels or missions for this character? And I don't really remember the levels, like at least not as far as the gameplay in them. But my favorite moment for this character is when you drop that needle.
Oh,
bruh,
yeah.
That one almost got me. I was just like, what? How do you drop the needle? But just yeah, that was. I mean, that was pretty much the highlight of playing through that character. I thought it created a good amount of difficulty, but not as much tension as what's the other girl's name? Not Tomoe.
Maria?
Yeah, Maria. I really didn't care for like the ones that were like really timed, and I think CR only had one time mission, and that was at the end of like the first set of levels.
I think you're right. And yeah, that is a good point with the whole needle thing. This game is very much a medical drama. So in the same way, like Phoenix Wright has its twists and turns, there's always like, oh, I think we can finally rest easy, and then it's like, wait, the patient's vitals are going critical. And you're like, what the heck? And then it's like all these tumors pop up, and then your doctor of choice has to go ham in that moment.
Objection.
More or less. So, okay, I think we did a pretty good job on CR, and we'll get back to him when we get back to the story stuff. Oh, quick aside as far as Nolan North goes, he did Deadpool in Marvel vs. Capcom. He does a lot of different voices. He just
Desmond
probably
Miles
the
in
most
Assassin's
prominent
Creed.
voice actor. Desmond in Assassin's Creed, correct. Okay, so moving on to character number 2, we have Maria Torres, and her profession is a first responder. So pretty much whenever an accident occurs, she's the first person on the scene and tries to do the initial care before anybody else gets there. She is voiced by Amanda Wynn Lee, who does Yukiko from the Persona 4 well, Persona 4 specifically. She is also Rei from Evangelion, so small world.
Hell yeah.
And some of the traits about Maria, she's very hot-headed and loud and proud about herself. And she is very much a act first, think later type of person. And her background is something you don't actually get into until a little bit later into the story, but she accidentally caused a fire at her old orphanage, but she managed to rescue a lot of the people from that fire. And I think it's kind of like she found out she was good at helping people then, and also she felt good about it, so that kind of led her into a profession. And another interesting character trait of hers is she's the only character that sees this phantom throughout the course of the game. This is one of the, I shouldn't say few supernatural things in this game, but it's one of the most prominent supernatural things. She sees this phantom throughout the game, and it's not really explained until a lot later. And for a gameplay perspective, she plays kind of similar to CR, but she's a little bit different. So instead of having just one patient like CR does, she normally has a multitude of patients she has to swap from. And in the top area of the screen, you'll see a little like medical indicator for each patient. And it's like 1, which is red, 2, which is black, and like 3 is green or something like that. And essentially, you want to keep the patient at 3 because that means their vitals are really good. If they start getting down to 1, that means they're very close to dying. So you might be operating on one patient, and then you look up at the screen and notice, oh, this other patient's at a 1. I should probably jump over to them. And hers gameplay is about quick reactions, figuring out what to do when, and kind of micromanaging a lot. Very similar to CR, is in they use a lot of similar tools. So she has gauze pads instead of a drain. She has the same healing vial that he does. She uses bandages and stuff like that as well. But hers is a little bit simplified, but a little bit more micromanaging. So what did you guys think about Maria's gameplay?
I think for the traditional, I guess you would call them traditional, but for like the traditional parts of this, or the traditional characters, I think I appreciated this one the most, just because I kind of like the swapping in between patients. It was kind of difficult to manage at times, but it also kept it kind of, I guess, like high intensity, I guess. So, but yeah, I think this was probably like my favorite campaign.
Yeah, so if CR was Ryu, then this character would be like Vega or something, or Claw, whatever you want to call him. Like very fast, very frantic, and just kind of going for it a lot of the time.
Right.
I would say that the thing I appreciated about her was like the micromanaging and like having to hop between patients. Or I guess one of the things is that you are on the scene a lot of times. So like she's like the first responder. So like there's some terrible accident and she's the first one on the scene. So she's dealing with multiple people at a time, and they're also finding new people as you're working on, and so she's getting more and more people added on her plate. And it reminded me a lot of like Cook Serve Delicious, how you're like trying to serve all these different customers that have these different desires. That was what it was playing her. So I really appreciated that gameplay aspect where it was just like, okay, I'm gonna cut your shirt and I'm gonna cut you open and drain some blood, but then I gotta hop over to this person because I need to give them the what do you call it, the shock, the
defibrillator.
Yes, the defibrillator, the clear. Like I need to go do that. So like they're having a cardiac arrest, so I need to go do that. And then it's like, oh, now this person, I need to when you put the little thing in their mouth so they can breathe, the
like intubation.
Yes, yeah. Like when I got to do that with this person, and it was like really, really fun. Like having to different things for different people. Like I thought.
Let me ask you this.
Fun.
Let me ask you this. Did you kind of ever? I don't know. There's a lot going on in our world right now. Did you get a sense of like empathy, and you're like, man, these people, like whenever it said new patient, and then it would be like new patient. New patient. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah. That was also a thing that I dealt with too, where I was just like, man, like no matter what, like you just have, like you're the only person here. And a lot of like, especially later in the game where she's literally working by herself. And it's just like, it is fairly or unfairly, like she's the only person qualified to kind of do some of this stuff. And,
it's also a big part of her character that she doesn't really trust the rest of her team too.
Yeah. And so like you're dealing with that, and it's just, it's a lot. So like you said, yeah, like kind of with everything that's going on now too. It's just like, man, like these people deal with everything, and they have to be, I won't say like, I don't want to say knowledgeable, but like be able to help somebody to like at the very least stabilize them, or like get them ready to go to whoever's going to be performing whatever on them, you know?
Right. And then you're like, man, like we were talking specifically about a mission in our messenger group about like, there's one mission specific where you heal the person, but you just don't have any way to cart them off. So you're trying to deal with these other people, and like you finish with this one person, but there's nobody to carry them off scene, and their vitals are dropping, and you're like, come on.
Yeah, like somebody needs to get here to take this person away.
Yeah. I also think hers are kind of like the most visceral of the surgeries for sure, because
because they're like on the scene. Well, hers and I kind of felt that way about the next character we'll probably talk about too.
right. Yeah, he does have there's some weird body horror things with him, but like hers is like, oh, well, this thing, you were on a pier and for whatever reason a ship exploded and this person got like a steel beam through the chest.
Yep.
And now you got to get these clippers and just
yeah.
Or hey, I'm out of the little proper intubators. I got a box cutter. Man, I was doing that on stream. And I'm like, guys, I kind of have to look away from this. You gotta, you use a box cutter, and then she's like, oh, I got this ballpoint pen, and then you get to the next patient, and they need the exact same thing, and it's like, man, that was my last ballpoint pen. We're gonna have to reuse this. I'm like, god dang, okay,
yeah.
This is just raw. So, let's see. Trevor, what did you think about the whole gameplay here and the tools and whatnot?
I enjoyed it to a certain extent, but I'm honestly not that great at games where you have to juggle and micromanage like this. So it was a little anxiety inducing to me, but it was fun. It was like I said, with CR, this one, CR seemed like an easier version of her missions, so I like the challenge. It was interesting, and then of course, like you were saying, all the resourcefulness from the tools that you use, even though it looks like you use far less tools.
Is Marie on the scene?
It sounds like it. She heard me talking that good stuff. But yeah. I enjoyed this one.
Cool. And yeah, I agree. It's similar to CR, but the difference is there's a lot more gimmicks, and I use that in like the positive way of gimmick to our gameplay, where there's a lot of like one-time conditions for hers, where it's like, oh, I need to inject these serums into these patients, or oh, I need to use this thing to cut this wire, or I need to slam their chest to get them to breathe again. There's a lot more like one-time gameplay scenarios. So I thought that was really cool how they did that. So did you guys have... I think her levels are a little bit more notable or differentiated than CSR. So did you guys have a favorite or least favorite for her?
I did like the end. I think it was her last one, the one where the bus came crashing in the mall.
Her last one has the serums.
That one was pretty hectic, and that one was fine too. I liked it that it was different, but her
last normal campaign one, I get you.
Yeah, I like the hecticness because it kind of like I do get enjoy the thing that Trevor said he doesn't like doing, like juggling a lot of plates in games. I do enjoy that. So it, like I said, like I'm a big fan of the Cook Serve Delicious franchise, and it reminded me a lot of that, where it's just like I'm making a little bit of, doing a little of this and this and this and this. Oh, I got to go back to the first one before I fail, and I get enjoyment out of that.
Cool. See, anybody have thoughts on the character as a whole, as a character, I guess? Did you like Maria's personality, her arc?
She a cutie.
She is pretty. I'm not gonna lie.
I was really weirded out because at first I was thinking I don't know why, just like when they first introduced the character, she's like just getting in at a late night, and she gets a call, and she's like, lives in some type of like garage, and she has a motorcycle, and I was like, is this a cop? Like, I don't know why, but that was my first read on the character. I was thinking she was like a, I don't know, like she was like this tough, like kind of tomboyish girl that, hangs out with dudes and is a cop for whatever reason. Because I think what?
Oh, that's true, except for the cop part.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I was just like, I guess not everybody in this game is it works for the hospital. I thought maybe she was like a first responder for like the police force or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really. I like her as a character. I didn't really like her story though. It didn't really like.
I think she might have the least story. Like,
yeah. I like
her main thing tying her to the main plot is the Phantom Child, which kind of like a weak.
Yeah,
but she does have a lot of character growth.
She does. But I didn't really, like, for lack of a better word, I didn't really care. Like, it was just kind of like whatever to me. So I was just kind of
hers was probably the most basic, where it's like, oh, I don't know how to trust people, and
I think hers and the next character.
To.
Hers and the next character.
I mean, next character trusts people. He's just.
I'm just talking about basic though.
Oh, Hank's. Let's get into Hank. Hank's cool. Okay. Hank Freebird, he is an orthopedic surgeon.
And a stereotype. I don't like that he's a stereotypical gentle giant Native American dude. I don't like that. We got to do better, Japan. We got to do better.
He is a war veteran suffering from PTSD. He has a superhero personality. He leads a dual life.
I like all of that. I do, but I don't like that it was just like I don't know. I don't really like the Native American stereotypes that like Japanese developers do. I don't know. I just don't
Did you guys read him as Native? Because
nah, I didn't.
Only because of the name.
Yeah, the name and just his appearance.
I don't. He's got like a Japanese mullet. I've kind of interpreted him as probably like maybe half Japanese, half something else. But
him and T-Hawk are homies.
Yeah, I was about to say T-Hawk a little bit.
I might be on you and not the game. I don't know.
It didn't really bother me though.
We can. Do you want to talk more about that, or do you want to? We can go back to that in the.
I mean, I don't really
part.
have like a whole bunch to say. I think it's kind of played out, and I definitely read him as Native American. Maybe I'm the only one that did, but like he definitely read as Native American to me, and just like the whole gentle giant, like peace loving kind of person, and like I'm just not really cool with like the depiction of Native Americans as being like docile and things like that. I'm just not. I don't think it's cool, and I think they're. We can do better in video games. Granted, I understand this is an older game, so I with a grain of salt, but yeah, we gotta do better.
Fair. He's voiced by David B. Mitchell, who is the new voice of Knuckles. I had to differentiate because one of the other characters is the old voice of Knuckles in the Sonic the Hedgehog series. He's also the narrator from Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So, I thought that was pretty interesting. And for his traits, I was saying he is he's pretty goofy, he's naive. He's also pretty honorable. Like that's a kind of big thing for him. And his background is he's a war vet who has a lot of PTSD flashbacks and stuff, so like he has a lot of trauma from that. And then because of that, he kind of leads a dual life as a doctor / superhero who is named Eagle Man, who runs around in a big, like, blue, almost looks like a blue version of the Flash. And just, he's kind of the cop, if anybody, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say that. He's definitely more, yeah.
Yeah. So his gameplay is all about precision. So I don't know too much about orthopedians, to be perfectly honest, but what Hank does specifically is he opens the patient up And normally he's trying with his scalpel to do these very precise excisions of tumors. He will cut bones to fit into places where bones might have been lost. He might put bones back together, then drill them back together, and then screw drive the plate into the bone or whatever. So, as Marcus was alluding to a little bit earlier, there's a lot of kind of like body horror-esque stuff that kind of goes on here as well. And Tank's main tools are the scalpel, where he uses to excise it. He uses a laser to cut out bone a lot of the time. Then he also has a number of drill tools, which allow him to drill into the bones to connect them. So, what did you guys think of Hank's gameplay?
One thing I want to say, I forgot to mention it for Maria. The co-op play for Maria was, say, for example, she starts off with 3 patients. You assign player 1 or player 2 those initial 3 patients. And so if I'm player 1, I'll assign myself 1 and 2, and I'll give Trevor the 3rd patient. If I switch over to the 3rd patient because they're getting into critical levels, then he takes control and he does everything. And when they start adding new patients, whoever hops to the new patients that have been unassigned, then that person gets control of that and takes care of that patient. And then for Hank's, the only thing I will say, and we can get into his, is that you just take turns. So you do one action, then Trevor does it. Or like I do an action, then Trevor does an action, then I do an action. Then so like you're just swapping back and forth. So I would say my order of favorite, I think Maria's was the most fun, then CR's, and then Hank's was the least fun to play co-op wise.
Okay. That makes sense.
The cool thing, or the thing I really dug about Hank's, was there was a combo meter that was like you were getting points as you were going. So as long as you didn't as long as you kept getting cools, I believe, then you were good. No, I take that back. As long as you didn't get any bads, you kept your combo meter going. I
think as long as you didn't get a miss, because I got a couple bads and
well, I
it's
was
really
thinking,
forgiving.
Yeah, I guess his was like, I felt like on one side it was like the easiest because you had like, you were doing some of the same things that you would do with CR, but it's like, oh yeah, you have to, cut somebody open. But with CR, it's just like, oh, you have to follow this line. But then with Hank, it was like, there was like a lane. And as long as you didn't veer outside of the lane, you were good. I don't know. I thought his was easy, but I really enjoyed the things that you did with him. I enjoyed the screwing in the metal plates to bones, and I enjoyed wasn't he the one that you had to cut bones out of carbon fiber too, like to create
yeah, you'd use the laser. And
yeah, and like, so I just, everything that you did with him, I really, really enjoyed. I think the only one I didn't enjoy was the the putting the long pin through somebody's femur. That one, for whatever reason, I always overshot it. Anything that was like hammering, I always overshot it, and I always got the bad, and like the comments that the other surgeon would make is like, dang, you're not trying to break it. And I even messed up when I was playing with Trevor, when you had to drill like the socket for somebody's new leg, and I just went too hard in the paint, and I just went all the way through into their hip.
So a little bit of an aside. One thing that I really, really appreciate about this game is when you get ranked at the end of the level, there's like a dialogue between the two characters, and every single rank that you have, like C, B, A, S, all different dialogue for every single mission. So it's like, oh man, well, you really did good there. Oh man, I got to go to the bathroom right now. I can't talk with you right now.
Yeah, I thought it was, when I first was playing it, I was like, are they actually switching this depending on what you do? And I was like, oh, yep, sure enough. Like, anytime you did good, like he said, like, your character would say like, oh, job well done. And if you did bad, they'd be like, oh well, I could do better, and then the person that you're operating with will be like, what are you talking about? You saved them, you're a hero. And meanwhile, like, this is, I thought that was really good, because that's exactly how I would be in real life, where I'm like, I could have done that better.
And then there's some people, like, we haven't gotten to him, but Gabriel, if you ever have him as your assistant, he's like, I gotta go. That was a little close, I'm not gonna lie.
But yeah, Hank was cool. I like, outside of how I felt about the character depiction, I really like, he was my favorite of the surgeons, I would say.
Cool. What did you guys, Trevor and Greg, what do you think about the gameplay here?
As far as like where I've ranked the characters, Hank's gameplay was probably my second to least favorite. Simply because it required so much more precision with the Wii controllers. Especially when you got to parts where you had to, and I didn't know this until maybe like the latter levels or the latter missions, but you can release the button and it'll end your combo, but you can stop yourself from going outside of the lane and getting, dinged or, losing points. I didn't know that until later on, like playing through his missions. I thought you had to do it in one continuous motion.
99% of the time, I try to do it in one continuous motion.
Well, I'm sure we all try, but if I saw myself like veering a little too close to the margin, especially on that one where you have to turn the Wii remote.
Woo!
Man,
that one was tough.
Are you talking about the chisel?
No. So the chisel one was easy. I think he's talking about the one where you're sawing, and it was like a round. Like you were doing like a round motion.
Yeah.
I think it was like when you were. Yeah, you were cutting. I think like a bone. Was it a bone, Trevor, or was it like? I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. It wasn't like the fabricated bone material. It was because it was
like a table saw.
Yeah, exactly. It was exactly like a table saw. Like you had to turn your Wii remote, in order to.
You had to rotate your wrist in order to like.
And
control.
if you were going down, then you basically had to turn. You turn right to turn right, but because of the orientation, it's like you're looking at it backwards, so it can get.
I literally have no clue what you're talking.
Man, let me find I'm gonna see if I can find an image of it.
Greg, how did you like Hank or?
Yeah, I like Hank. I guess the thing that I was worried about was going outside of the lane, but I found that you didn't have to be, well, at least to not go outside the lane. I feel like you didn't have to be super precise.
The thing that maybe it doesn't explicitly tell you this, but if you slow down, like you're following the guideline, but if you slow down, then everything slows down. So what I do is if I ever started to lose control, I just kind of hold my hand in place. And then it would stop, and your combo would continue.
Right. But yeah, I think the only thing I had a problem with, I think I had to replay one of the missions where you had to put the bone fragments back together. Just because I think I ran out of time because I was, for whatever reason, I just couldn't find the right piece where each piece of the bone was supposed to go. But I mean, outside of that, I really dug his.
Yeah. I'm kind of leaning with Trevor. Well, I still like Hank, but his missions seem to be a little bit long compared to a lot of the other ones. And, I don't know. I felt like his were a little bit more repetitive. Overall, I still liked him as a character, liked his, gameplay. But
I mean, compared to Tomoe.
Honestly, we're gonna have a fight about Tomoe. I already know it.
Let's do it. Well, the one thing I will say too, or I'm sorry, were you done with Hank? Because I wanted to say something.
Well, I was gonna ask. Lastly, how did you guys feel about him as like a character? Everything about it, I guess. And you already said the one thing, but if you want to expand or go into other details.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I felt like everybody kind of had like a stereotypical like story arc, and like they kind of redeemed themselves, or in my eyes, where it's like, oh, they're taking them in a different direction than you normally see, or there's more depth to the character. And I felt like he, to me, had the least amount of growth, I feel like. Because he was just as, to me, he was just as accepting in the beginning of his like nice dude hero type as he was at the end. So I didn't.
I think the thing. Go ahead.
No, you got it. You got it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think the thing about him is he's still at the same place, but he's a little bit more comfortable in his own skin.
Yeah, that's true.
Because like his big thing is he has this Eagle Man alter ego who's a superhero that seemingly does good stuff, but for whatever reason, the papers and pretty much everybody around him absolutely hates it. And he almost ditches that alter ego in a very kind of like Peter Parker, Spider-Man 2S fashion. But then at the end of the day, he realizes, F these people, I need to do what I need to do. So that's kind of his arc.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it just didn't do a lot for me personally. About like I like the character, and I like his like I said, his and Maria were my two favorite of the surgeon people, and I don't know, like I enjoyed playing as him. I just didn't enjoy his story personally.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that brings us to our next doctor, who is
Boo.
Tomoe Tachibana. She is an endoscopic surgeon, and she is voiced by Stephanie Sheh, who is actually the voice of Hinata from Naruto, very prominent, and Sailor Moon from 1996-97 Sailor Moon series. So yeah, that is Tomoe right there. Tomoe, she is a very graceful, elegant, and honorable person, and that's kind of like her shtick for the most part. She comes from a royal family in Japan, I'd like to say, and pretty much her background is she was a daughter of a royal family, or a royal kind of like ninja-esque clan, who left to America to become a doctor. So Tomoe's gameplay, she's an endoscopic surgeon, which means she uses an endoscope, which, to the best of my description, is like kind of like a threaded tool that can go through the body as it pleases. So I've got to actually explain her gameplay, because this is something we're going to be talking about for a little bit. You hold the you control the endoscope with the Wii remote. The pointer for the Wii remote acts as a flashlight, so you always kind of have to have it pointed at screen, otherwise everything's just dark on screen. You hold the A button and you move, you like do kind of like a jab motion forward with your hand to make the endoscope go forward. Inversely, you can hold A, pull it back to go back. You use the nunchuck to look around, and then when you're ready to actually switch tools, you hold the C button on the nunchuck and then use the directional pad to switch the tool. And then you use the Z button right under the C button on the nunchuck to actually use the tool. So there's going to be a lot of complaints about Tomoe's gameplay, and that's acceptable because like it is very unintuitive, to say the least. The thing that you have to do is navigate with these kind of like jabby motions, and then you're also trying to move left, right, up, and down at the same time. And it gets very like, it's uncomfortable. It is literally kind of uncomfortable to do for long periods of time. And as far as her tools go, you have a drain just like just about every other doctor. You have why am I drawing such a brain fart on her tools right now?
You have the shot.
You have the shot.
To like.
You've got the not suture, but it's like a clamp.
Yeah, to like kind of the
Close blood clot.
Hemostatic.
Exactly.
The snare to grab things. You have the drain, like, or the forceps to grab things, and then you have a spray
needle.
Yeah, a spray to like kind of show you where things are, and then a scalpel.
Right. So, yeah, you're using a conjunction of those tools, and hers is a little bit more navigation oriented than the other doctors, I'd say. I think that's the big differentiator. I'm just gonna open it up. Say whatever you want.
Sucks. Okay, so the one thing I was gonna say with the co-op, that me and Trevor didn't want to do hers. The co-op for this one, from my understanding, one person controls the light and the other person does everything else. That sounds terrible.
I thought the one person would probably select the tools.
Nope.
And then the other person would do everything else.
Nope. That's about it. So the thing that I didn't like about hers is having to hold my hand up like I was turning the channel, but just the entire duration of the mission, you know? So I didn't like that. And like in general, I don't know if it was where I had my motion sensor set or where I was sitting, but any motion that required me to like kind of hold the Wii remote up that way, because I had trouble with the defibrillator too, doing that. So anytime I had to do any of those type of motions, I struggled. Not struggled, but it just wasn't. I had to do it multiple times in order to get it to read what I wanted to do. But with her, it just wasn't intuitive. I wish there was like a more elegant way that they could have had you controlling the endoscope as it's going through the person's body. The other thing, there is so you're constantly holding I think the A button and the B button and then motioning forward with the Wii remote, but there is an elegant way to go back where you just hit down on the D-pad. So like I think it's very essential for you to use that to kind of navigate. The parts where I stopped liking her as much, because she did start growing on me, it was when you had the branching paths, like when you were in that person's lungs and like some later missions where you have all these branching paths, and they do a good job of like pointing out areas that you've previously visited, so like you don't have to do that, but just the movement kind of limitation, and then like I think some of the later levels they give you a timer, it just like I didn't care for it. It wasn't fun to me, just straight up.
I think the thing that annoyed me the most was just the movement part, and then the fact that if you did make a mistake, right, like the moving is kind of annoying without running into something within the body. Like, I mean, that was one of the issues I ran into, and then that compounded with the time limit on that one particular mission was like, all right, yeah, this is kind of trash.
And I think there was also too, just because you were in particular parts of the body where like there was resistance to moving, so it was also moving against some type of bodily function that was making it more difficult. That sucked as well.
Right, and then they'd also make the passageways through the intestines or whatever like very narrow, and it required a level of precision that just with motion controls probably didn't need to happen.
And then I know me and Trevor talked about this when we were playing, but like selecting things with her, and I think Trevor mentioned this earlier, like you hit the C button and then use the left nunchuck to kind of scroll to where you wanted, but then you have to hit the button again, and that was unlike any other character. So like usually with the other characters, you just kind of move to the thing you want and then it's selected, but with her, it's you have to click the button, go to it, then click the button again to kind of select it. And I didn't understand that design choice and why she was different in that aspect.
One is, if I recall, don't you have to use the nunchuck to kind of don't you use it in the, I guess, navigation a little bit? I can't remember off the top of my head.
You use the controller, I guess you could say, to like angle where you're looking at.
Right, so or angle the tool. That's why. Okay. It's because you're angling, like, if you're using the drain, you use the thumbstick then to actually control it, even after you've pointed.
Well, I mean, but they give you that lock-on feature, so as long as you have your reticle kind of pointed in the general vicinity and it's highlighted, then there's not as much precision as they lead you to believe.
Maybe this is the difference once like you start going for the higher rank stuff, but like being able to be in the general vicinity of stuff and not having to actually hit A to move, and instead just being like, okay, let me just use the nunchuck to fine tune where I need to put the strain. Mm-hmm. So like I completely agree with you through my initial play, like not even my initial playthrough, like my playthrough this time, the first playthrough. But then when I started getting the S ranks after the fact, it started becoming very second nature for me to do the whole C-stick thing. And like I was saying in the chat, like there's the one mission where the bus happens and essentially you're trying to find patients and stuff.
Yeah.
I went from finishing that with 5 seconds to spare on my first run through to essentially finishing it in 4 minutes without even really memorizing anything.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that really hurts Tomoe is, one, if you're doing it in this sequential style, which I'd still recommend to anybody, hers is the easiest to just forget because the muscle memory isn't similar to any of the other doctors. And then 2, like, I feel like they'd have to refine it, but I would play a game based off of the Tomoe gameplay if they refined it in the right ways. They'd have to make some adjustments, like you're saying, like some major ones where you wouldn't have to do the whole A and then push. Like if you could have just held A and maybe used the nunchuck to move around instead of, having to physically push the Wii remote forward, or at least give that as an option, I think that would have done wonders.
Something to make it more on rails, almost.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Because, I'm not against the concept of having a more navigation-oriented doctor, which is kind of her distinct thing versus the surgeries that you do on the other patients, where they do a little bit more linear stuff. Hers is like, okay, well, now I got to go in the right lung. Now I need to backtrack, go to the left lung, do this. I just don't think it was definitely not intuitive in the way that they needed it to be.
Yeah, and I don't think that these other two would have ran into it, but I think it was one of her last missions where you have to inject, like, there's those 4, like, I don't know if they were tumors or whatever, and you had to get them to the same level of ready to be cutness.
Right.
And like, so like I'm talking to you guys and the viewers, there's like, think of a square of 4 tumors, and they're all connected. So if you shoot the top right one, it will get the most amount of medicine, but the 2 that are closest to it, adjacent. The top left, the 2 adjacent to it, so the top left and bottom right will get a little bit of medicine too. And you're trying to like manage getting them all to the same level of ready to be cut. And if you mess up, then the tumor spreads and you have to like redo the thing over again in order to get to that point. I think I did that part like 4 times, and it was just so frustrating.
Maybe they didn't explain it well enough, but okay, there's 2 things you have to do. Well, there's 3 things. So you use the spray to neutralize them so they just don't explode off the bat.
Yeah.
So you do that. There's actually 6 tumors, and you were saying, the 2 adjacent ones get bigger. Like, the one you're injecting directly into gets biggest, and then the 2 adjacent to it get bigger at a slower rate. And what you're trying to do is make them all green by getting them to a certain threshold. And what can happen is, if you overshoot one, it starts to blink like it's about to explode. If you use the drain, you can just drain it.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know it until I was starting to get like S ranks and stuff, and yeah, that makes it a lot less trivial, because one of the things you have to do, and actually I couldn't use the drain when I was getting the S rank because there's specifically a challenge not to use the drain, but if you do mess up and it explodes, it requires like you to go through 4 waves of surgery.
Yep,
to fix
and then
stuff.
To get back to that spot. And so like I messed up and made it explode or whatever like 4 times. And so, like, I think that that particular mission,
that's like an extra 6 or 7 minutes there.
Yeah, that particular mission took me about 20 something minutes to do.
Yeah, where like when I got the S, it was about 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah. So it just that part I
Hers
didn't
has
really care
her
for.
missions have a huge skill ceiling, but it's just like you're not incentivized to hit that unless you're specifically going for S rank.
And then the other thing too, and this is not a complaint per se, as just a comment, is like because of the lock-on system and everything, and just the way the camera is angled, because you're going through the person's body instead of looking at it from top down. I felt like a lot of times it was just like those things that you had to like not suture to burn, that were the things that the little
The
volcanoes.
clamps?
Yeah, the volcano of blood that was happening, that you had to like singe shut and then drain the blood. Like, I felt like the game was forcing me to approach it at a specific way, where it's like I want to like singe it and then drain, but the game is making me drain then singe, and like, go ahead.
Yeah, normally, like, it's kind of the same with other doctors, though, where if you have blood pools, sometimes you can't get to other stuff.
Well, I felt like in this particular, once it like locked onto something, even if you move the thing away, it was going to take whatever was the thing on top. And I didn't feel like I had that issue as much with the other characters as I did with her. And it's not like a complaint, more so it's just a comment, where it was just like there was like a very specific order of operations with her. I felt like it was a little bit more rigid with her than with the other characters.
That's fair. Greg, Trevor, do you guys have any additional things? I know this is everybody's least favorite character pretty much, so you know.
Nah, I think that's it for me.
Right.
I think too the surprising part for me was, I think story-wise I enjoyed her character.
Tomo is really cool.
Yeah, like I was like, oh, this is a rich girl, she's gonna be like whatever, and I'm not gonna really like her. But like, I really like, I don't know what it was, but her shtick, I wrote down
The whole Ninja Clan backstory.
the path of honor. I need the best tool. Oh yeah, so like when they showed her endoscope, and it was like this custom made one because she was like rich,
Wooden.
and then she's like, the path of honor demands that I need the best tools for the job. And I was just like, the path of honor and like all those quotes were hilarious to me, and I really dug that about her character.
See, that was my introduction into this game, and I was all into it. I was just like, okay, this is gonna be a pretty fun game. Like, the characters are gonna be cool, and then I started playing her gameplay. Whew.
Yeah.
It was rough, and especially with me not being used to the Wii controls. So it was.
Yeah, it's cumbersome and uncomfortable for long periods. Like, I did turn around on her gameplay at a certain point, but I completely agree with you guys that, like, first playthrough, it's just not fun whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, I take that. I kind of enjoyed her first couple of missions, but like some of the longer ones, like the bus one, and then the one that you were talking about, Marcus, where you have to go down the right lung and left lung, it can get very out of hand very fast with time in her.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing too, I really liked her butler Hanzo. That dude was a G.
Pretty much everybody in that story, like everybody in her story specifically, was pretty cool. Like,
yeah.
We're gonna go into it during the story, but the scene that you have over in Japan, what Hanzo
does
what
to
her
her
dad
dad
needs done to him, and then what Hanzo does to him.
Yes, I had that written down.
Okay, we'll get to it, I promise. Okay, and yeah, we pretty much talked about her. Her whole character arc is kind of like independent. So she's over in America, and then her family back in Japan wants her to come back and kind of take over, but she is kind of living a split life, kind of like Hank, where she's like, do I become the heir to this throne, or do I just do the thing I love and help people? So, yeah, interesting character. Maybe not the best gameplay. Moving on to Gabriel Cunningham.
The best character.
Dude, my boy Gabriel is so fake. Okay, I had this one viewer, and I think her description was very on point, where you have fake Mugen / Spike. So you have Mugen from Cowboy Bebop, and also Mugen from Samurai Champloo and Spike from Cowboy Bebop. And you put them into one character and make them a doctor.
I don't know what she's talking about, but hell yeah, he's tight.
He's good. He's good. He is voiced by Travis Willingham, who is the voice of Thor in most video games. So Marvel's Avenger Thor, Marvel vs. Capcom Thor, I believe. All those. He was the old voice of Knuckles. And he's also Guile from Street Fighter V, as one of our podcast members plays a lot of. So he probably recognizes that voice a lot.
I didn't even pick up on that, but that's kind of funny.
He felt like a character from Catherine, too.
He probably was. He might be dude from Catherine. I don't know.
Yeah. Like his voice sounded so familiar to me.
Catherine. Man. I'll look that up in a second. Okay, Johnny Ariga.
Johnny, I think, was like the...
Oh, he's that dude at the bar, right? He's the friend that's like kind of overcoming his like homosexuality, like not overcoming it, but like coming to terms with it is what I meant to say.
I thought Johnny was the one with the hat. That was like... I don't, whatever. Just
Yeah. He's a character from Catherine. Oh, black dude or black-haired dude that has a cigarette.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah. So that's that guy. So traits about Gabriel: he's very sarcastic and smug, pretty apathetic about his life outside of the job. He's very apathetic at first, but he clearly cares about his patients, and pretty much once they get into that diagnosis room, he doesn't let them out until he figures out exactly what's wrong with them. So I thought that was a cool dichotomy between like how he just kind of hates people, but then he's also obsessed about saving people at the same time, probably like to the same extent that Hank is. And his background is a little bit more ambiguous than a lot of the other characters. He's a diagnostician who has a lot of family issues going on outside of work. He was also a soldier, or at least he said he served his time. So I think him and Hank get along very well because of that, and they kind of have a lot of interactions that kind of go into that subliminally. And Gabriel is our first character that kind of controls like a visual novel. So what happens is a patient comes into your office, you ask them a series of questions, you look for abnormalities in what they're telling you, a la Phoenix Wright. So, the patient might just be like, oh, I was at work, then my stomach started to ache really bad, and my head started getting, I started getting sweats in my head or whatever. And then you point it out and you're like, okay, that's an abnormality. Then you have a tool, also best tool. I need a Roni in my life. Roni is your computer assistant that stores all of your diagnoses. So you go ask them some questions. You physically examine them. So sometimes you just look at their body. It's like, oh, well, this person, their eyes just not opening in the way that it should, or it's discolored. That must be jaundice. And it adds to your list of symptoms. Then eventually they lift up their shirt and you use the stethoscope to kind of check out their stomach and also their heart rate and stuff like that. Another thing that will happen is they'll give you a chart, which is so dope. I could do this for my actual job. I think I could do this every day, where I'm just looking at a left column and a right column. It's like, oh man, well, his AST levels are rather low. Or, oh my God, his bilirubin levels are 402. They should be at 37. And you have to figure out which numbers are just way out of whack for the patient. And then you hit A, and that adds to the symptoms. On top of that, you go to, you eventually get x-rays for the patients, and you'll have to examine their x-ray, and then the game also provides a normal person x-ray of that same area. And then you're looking for discrepancies between the two images. And sometimes there's like, oh, I might get like 5 x-rays and only one of them has an inconsistency. So you can spend quite a bit of time doing that. And then once you get all of that data, you go back to your computer, Roni, and Roni is like, hey, here are some possible disease candidates that this person might have. And then you get like essentially like a WebMD 2-paragraph description of the thing. And then you take your symptoms on your left, pull them over to your right, and then you figure out which diseases it could potentially be. And then you hit diagnose. So what did you guys think about the gameplay here?
Y'all can go first.
I think this was probably, well, I guess compared to Naomi, I think I like this a little bit more. Just because I thought it was kind of fun, just kind of going through the statements, trying to pick out, abnormalities, comparing the vitals, I guess, doing, because I think there's a section where you have to look at a EKG, right? So you have stuff like that. You use stethoscope, but I did appreciate the tool set, and also since it's different from the other ones, it's a lot more chill. I mean, not that the other ones are like super high intensity, but compared to like Maria, this is like kind of like a walk in the park, right?
Yeah, I think his is a little bit more straightforward. Well, some things are, some things aren't. Like,
yeah, there's definitely some weird time. Well,
the X-rays in specific would get me for periods of time.
Yeah, and there was like a couple times too where I just missed something small, like I don't know, like maybe I just didn't pay attention to one of the values on when I was looking at
the charts. Yeah,
I'll just miss that, or like I think there's another part in particular where you're supposed to pay attention to something specific when you're examining the patient, and I just missed it. Like I just, for whatever reason, I just didn't see it.
Yeah, and the game's pretty decent about like if you leave a room and re-enter, it's like, oh, I think I can still find one more thing. It's just a matter of finding what that one more thing is a lot of the time.
Right.
Trevor, any thoughts on Gabriel?
Just want to talk my shit like Sway in the morning. All you whack doctors out there. This right here, Gabriel. This is a doctor. Welcome to the Valley of the Hyenas. But no, Gabriel made this game for me. Gabriel and Naomi. I think I mentioned that after I played Tomoe's first mission, I put the game down for like a week. And then I came back and played one of Gabriel's missions. And that really turned this game around for me. I honestly wish this entire game was like this. It was like Gabriel and Naomi's gameplay.
To be fair, like 2/3 of it is. Like,
so that's my hot take for this game. Actually, that's not my hot take. My hot take is the fact that this is the best game that we've played on the podcast from Dante since let me see.
It better be since Transistor.
Wait, was that Dante's game?
I'm pretty sure Dante picked Transistor. Well, I'm checking.
I thought I had Transistor with
You're right. You did. So
I was gonna say Beyond Good and Evil, but
then you messed up because you forgot Dead Souls or Dead Cells.
I just have to accept that you guys hate game. Like, I love this game, but I have to also accept that you guys hate gameplay. That's my big takeaway.
He also picked Shenmue. Man, he picked some bangers.
You picked Ace Attorney, so
Freaking Ninja Gaiden Black. Anyway,
since Ace Attorney,
we have a timeline, so let's not get into my choices.
But yeah, I really enjoyed Gabriel's and like, is he supposed to be like the what do you call it? Like the head doctor or something in this hospital? Because I know he's like involved.
No.
Okay, it seems like he's involved in everybody else's stories. At least
he
when
definitely
it comes to
is
the
a
hospital.
connecting glue type of character.
But yeah, really don't have that much negative to say about
Hmm.
it. I wish this was on the Switch because I just want to play the rest of Gabriel's missions.
Marcus,
He's great. Trevor's right.
he is great.
Gabriel was my favorite character. I, I love the spot the difference games and those like things at bars and Dave and Buster's and whatever, where you have to look at two pictures and figure out what are the five things that are wrong and under a timer. So like, I've been doing that my whole life. My job is to spot differences in files and not spot differences, but call out mistakes and things. So like looking at things like that is like my job. So like when I had to look at like people's X-rays and MRIs and everything, I was like, yo, I'm right at home. I was like, maybe I can have a second career as a diagnostician or something. Because even like look when people were getting their what's it called, their test run and everything, and just going through their numbers and saying, oh, this is an abnormality, or this is too high, or this is too low. I enjoyed that too. The only part I didn't really care for was the visual, like looking at the person, not the listening to their heartbeat and
Right, just like
their
clicking on the
breathing.
person and looking at them, right?
Yeah, and I think part of it had to do with this game, like it. I don't know, like I don't know if it was my monitor that I was playing on or just the age of the game, but it wasn't like high enough fidelity, I guess. 'Cause I
Hmm.
think there was one where like somebody had some issue with something on their face around their eyes, and it took me forever to see that. Um, I
Guy with
think
the
it.
swollen fingers.
I, yeah, yeah. I think it was the politician, like where you had to get him angry and get
Oh,
his
okay,
eyes
yeah, yeah.
open. It took me a little bit to figure out because I was just like, I guess I'm not seeing something, and it
That
just had
one
to.
was weird because you had to like. This game does a little bit of fat shaming, but like
Yeah, it
you
does.
have to point at his stomach and like the politician dude is very ornery. He's like, I'm gonna sue you for sexual harassment
Yeah,
for
yeah,
making me lift up my shirt. And then at some point you're like, oh, okay, I need to get this diagnostic, but I also need this one last symptom and I need to check his eyes to do it. It's
yeah,
like, what's the easiest way to make this guy mad? And you've commented on his weight a couple times, so
yeah.
you
And they even play with the trope of the Japanese school girls. Like the very first person you do is like some girl in a school uniform, and you have to ask her to lift her shirt up so you can, check her heart rate, check her breathing, check her stomach or and everything. I like the banter between him and Roni. You know how your boy loves a good robot, so like that, like, huh?
their writing was just excellent at this part of the game. Like the whole back and forth between Roni and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
felt very genuine and actually like I think that was actually like good writing right there.
Yeah, yeah. So like I legitimately have no complaints about uh his gameplay like Trevor said. I don't know if I'd go as far as I mean, I would play a game of just Gabriel for sure, but I did enjoy the other characters in this, so I'm glad that we got this in addition, and like it kind of makes me want to like I don't know, I'm like, man, what is a game that I can play that has like this kind of stuff in it, because it was very fun.
Yeah, and I guess back to Trevor and your point, like these missions are significantly longer than the other missions. So like probably two of Gabriel's missions accounts for like a majority of everybody else's. Like doing two of those takes up as much time as like 4 or 5 surgeries easily.
Worth worth.
Fair enough. So the last character we have is Naomi Kimishima, and she is a forensic specialist slash coroner, and she's actually voiced by Kirsten Potter, who's probably like the least prominent of the voice actors or least prolific. Only role that I really recognize her from was Tai Takemi from Persona 5. She's a doctor, ironically, in that. And she's very
She
quiet.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, she does. And I just couldn't put my finger on it. And then I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it's very interesting that she plays a doctor who gives you a lot of experimental drugs in Persona 5. So, she has that roll down pat. So her traits are she's fairly quiet, she's very intelligent and also sarcastic. And I guess on top of just her as a character, because she kind of comes with a pair as well, where you have this assistant who goes by Little Guy, who is kind of like your specialist on the other end that does all the analytics for you. So you get evidence, and then you say, hey, can you analyze these bloodstains, or can you analyze these fingerprints? And he'll, give you some back and forth. So that's kind of like the dialogue that you have with Naomi for the most part. And her background, she's actually a doctor from Trauma Center Second Opinion, who they actually added to that port of the first game. And essentially, I can't remember if it happened at the end of that game or somewhere between that game and this game, but she's diagnosed with a fatal illness. And she has this is one of those abnormality things in this game, Supernatural. She has a phone that hears the last words of a deceased person. So that's always like the starting point for all of her cases. You find the body, you get the last words that they said, you examine the body and try to find any type of clues like, oh, here's a gunshot wound, or oh, here's a laceration on the foot, or what have you. You build that as evidence. You look at their clothes, you also get evidence from that. Then you go back to the office. You try to either send off evidence for analysis, or you can combine certain pieces of evidence. And when you do that, a little logic game comes up. And it's kind of like the courtroom scenes in Phoenix Wright, where it's like, okay, the judge is asking me a question. I need to figure this out right now. These two clues are linked by blank. And then there's always 4 questions or 4 responses that you can give. One of them's right. And if you make an excellent deduction, the clues merge into one. And each one of the clues has a star rating. So you start with potentially like 1 star. Once you fill up all the little stars at the bottom of an evidence piece, it becomes solid evidence. Once you get solid evidence, you play a little game at the very end where she kind of puts together the entirety of the murder scenario or whatever happened scenario. And once you go through those sequentially, you reach the truth. The other things that happen in her gameplay are there are voice recorders that happen where you get testimony from witnesses or people on the scene, and you look into those statements for abnormalities. And then the other thing you do with her is you go to the crime scene and you will examine for evidence. You can just examine, you can do fingerprint stuff, that like fingerprint powder to look for prints. You have a ALS liquid, I'd like to say, to spray, and you can look for blood stains. And I think that's the basis of her gameplay. What do you guys think of Naomi's gameplay?
Magnificent.
Whoever wants to answer.
I enjoyed this as much as Gabriel's.
It's very good. It's very tonal shift from the Doctors. Like, this one, the murder had already occurred, so the person you're dealing with is always dead, and you're just kind of backtracking.
Yeah. I think I probably could play a whole game like this. I don't know if I like it more than the I'm already blanking.
Gabriel.
Yeah, I don't know if I like it more than him, but I do like it a lot though. I'll say that much. But I only did one of her missions, so I don't know how much it changes in the following ones. But that one that I did do, I really did like it a lot, though.
They definitely get more involved, and there's definitely more story that happens throughout it. Marcus, what about you?
I enjoyed hers as well. I think I preferred Gabriel's to hers, but I did really enjoy hers too. There were a couple of things that I didn't like about hers as much. I didn't really care for the looking for evidence when it involved having to fingerprint and spray, because it felt like just kind of tedious. I don't know. I didn't enjoy that part. I much enjoyed like, oh, this thing looks out of place. Let me inspected or whatever. Because the ones I'm thinking of specifically was one of the missions that I did like was the ones with the what do they call it? The bomber, the mad bomber. I don't remember.
Raging Bomber.
Name. Raging Bomber. Yeah. So like, I enjoyed the puzzle part where you were in the room with the 4 cell phones, but trying to find everything in there, I didn't really like. I don't know. I didn't. care
some
for
of the
it.
puzzles there were a little obtuse and
Like, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I got stuck on that card one for the longest time, even though I got what it was saying, but for whatever reason, I was thinking Ace was 13 and not 10. And essentially, there was like a card counting puzzle where you had to be like, okay, it's Jack, Ace, King, Queen, or whatever. And then you had to put in numbers into this phone in that order. So it'd be like Jack is like 11, King is 12, such and such, such and such.
Yeah.
And like, if you don't know that, then you're screwed. Or if you have the wrong interpretation, I'm like, well, the ace is the highest card, so obviously that's 13. But in reality, it's 10. So that screwed me over.
Yeah. So like that one, that part I didn't care about. I enjoyed looking at bodies and getting that evidence. And then I enjoyed, like, again, the banter between her and little guy. I enjoyed, though I will say that there were parts where I got stuck where, like, I also to an extent felt like there were some times when you were combining pieces of evidence and like you had to do it in a certain order, otherwise you couldn't progress. So like it felt a little bit more strict than it needed to be at times too.
Right. I agree with you on that, as far as like sometimes there just felt like that. I don't know if it could have been streamlined, but it didn't feel like I was actually solving something. And sometimes I was just kind of, let me give everything to little guy and then let me just do every possible permutation of combination, you know.
Yeah, so like there would be like, oh, clearly these two, no, I shouldn't say clearly, but let's compare these things together. And it's just like, oh, sorry, you can't do that now. And then you compare 2 other things. There's some type of observation, and then you can compare the first 2 things you did. And like things like that, where it's just like, this doesn't seem realistic. And I also didn't really care for at the end, where it's just like, so let's go over the case again. So the person died how? And then it's like, choose the card that says how the character died. And it's just like I got it. Like, I don't need to go through this whole thing over, you know? Like, I didn't like that part.
I get what you're saying, but I feel like they needed to do that just because, like, you probably did most of those in one sitting, right?
Yeah, I just now thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I literally did. Like, I never...
Because some of those can last, like, 2+ hours, potentially.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but
like,
no, I completely get you, where it's like, well, I get it, but, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, like I enjoyed looking at people's clothes. I enjoyed looking at the bodies. I enjoyed putting the pieces of evidence together. I enjoyed the logic, kind of like, oh, well, you know, what is it? Great reasoning or great? What was
excellent reasoning?
Excellent reasoning. So yeah,
also,
I enjoyed
some of those answers are just so funny.
Yeah. The one thing I will say too, and maybe I'm just dumb, but like I feel like a lot of these, like I was like, oh, obviously this is the thing, and then I would end up being wrong. And I felt like I don't know if I know you're normally really good about knowing how something is going to pan out, and I felt like every time I was incorrect in what I thought happened or who I thought was the guilty person.
I'd say I was about 50-50 on this one.
Gotcha.
Man, some of those, like, we talked about some of Maria's being brutal, but there's some incredibly brutal murders or deaths in this one. Like, the one that really stood out to me was the girl that was thrown over the bridge and her body was all discombobulated.
Yeah, that one.
You find out that, like, she was terminally ill, but she was beating up her parents and she got locked in her room. And
that one was wild.
That one was crazy. Yeah. Greg, you should definitely, like, I don't know if you have any plans to go back to this, but I think you'd enjoy some of these stories for sure.
It seemed like
Yeah, no, I'm planning on finishing it.
all of her. Well, I don't want to spoil it for Greg, but it seemed like they were all like a crime of passion.
Well, it ties into the very end of the game, which kind of explains it.
Yeah, aside from her very first one, I think everybody ties into the overall disease that happens kind of in the latter half of the game.
Okay.
Let's see. So the one thing I wanted to touch on before we go into like just a quick story overview is I didn't ask what were your favorite, like least favorite Gabriel / Naomi levels. If you don't have one, you don't have to say, but if you had any like stand out, I feel like more so than the other characters, there are missions here that like really stand out. So I guess for me, for Gabriel at least, I enjoyed Tillman. I thought that was really fun with the politician and just how ornery and stubborn he was. And that was kind of like when you were really starting to kind of learn all the functionalities of Roni and kind of start to accept her and be like, oh, well, she can do that. So I thought that was a cool one. And the one I was just talking about, the very brutal one, was probably my favorite Naomi mission. Just like that one kept me at the edge of my seat.
I really like the stuff with the Mad Bomber with Naomi. And I think with Gabriel, I did like the politician one. I think the one, was it his son that had like 3 different, like you kept having to go back to him?
His son and the soldier you do at the end have 3, I think.
I feel like there was one that, like, I don't remember, because I feel like his son was a very earlier on one.
I think
No, I think it was the one. I think it was the one with the lady, the younger, the 20-year-old woman,
the working woman.
Yeah, that her, like, she was like, I'm in a rush and I gotta go, and you like, well, I need you to do this test, and she's like, fine. Then you do the test. Then like her symptoms are getting worse as you were going on. The same thing with the soldier too. I like those ones where it's just like, okay, she has this. That sounds bad, but now has these other symptoms. Oh crap, now she has this too? And you know, like it just keeps getting worse and worse.
So this is something I meant to ask during the Gabriel section. Did anybody kind of play WebMD on themselves during this part, especially with those charts? Or am I the only one guilty of that?
Well, it reminded me of like every time I go to my doctor, they want to take blood. I don't know why they want blood every time, but
now you know.
they always send me my blood work results, and so like it usually has like a comparison of like this is a good level for cholesterol, you know, this is where you are. And so I always look at that to try to make sure I'm in the clear.
Yeah, but I was starting to get like freaked out on some of these. I'm like, oh my god, he's sweating. He might have Werner syndrome, or maybe I got that.
Yeah, there was one point where my wife actually walked in, and I was telling her like, hang on, give me a second, I'm trying to diagnose this patient, and she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, I'm analyzing these CT scans. And she looks over at the screen, like, in disbelief, like, yeah, right. And then she looks up and it's just like, oh, okay, carry on. It's like, I'm doing important work here.
Okay. Let's quickly jump into the story. So, like I said, we start with the scene at the very beginning with the girl in the field who looks dead, and you see some flowers and some butterflies fly off, and then right after that, you kind of get into the beginning where you pretty much meet all the characters, and I just made bullet points for all the big things. So, first really big thing was Gabriel meeting Tillman, the politician, and diagnosing him with, I can't remember exactly what he's diagnosed with, but essentially the crux of it is he's going to need a specialist if he wants to live the life he wants to lead. Like, Gabriel's like, hey, you can't get stressed. As long as you stay away from your job as a politician, you're probably fine. But Tillman's like, no, I love America. I need to do my job. And Gabriel's like, okay, well, this surgery that you need done for this specific thing, it has like a 10% success rate. but I might know a guy. So then you meet Ian Holden, who is the detective that you meet. He always has sunglasses on and has orange hair. He begrudgingly releases CRSO1 from prison. And it's like, hey, you have a 250-year sentence, but we're willing to take a couple years off of that if you do the surgery for this politician. Later, you kind of find out that, well, one, CR is in jail for this kind of bioterrorism incident that he was indicted for. And apparently, Ian's wife and child were victims of that. And during this process, CRSO1 begins his work at Resurgam, which is the main hospital of the game, and performs the operation on Tillman and another patient not too long after that, and both of them were a major success. And that's kind of his first main story beat, where the team's starting to like him and they don't really understand why he has this prison sentence. The other 2 points I have for the beginning of the game are you learn about Hank and his alter ego, Eagle Man, who is this kind of like street level superhero by Marvel standards, maybe even below that, to be perfectly honest. And everybody kind of hates him. And another big story point for Hank is there's a girl, Claire, who tries to kill herself by, I don't know if she jumps off of a bridge or a roof or whatever, but like essentially she breaks a lot of bones, and Hank is the one that saves her or pretty much fixes a lot of her bones after that incident. And then my last thing for the beginning section of this game is Tomoe operates on Joshua, who is Gabriel's son. And Gabriel's just a no-show, which is kind of a big thing. He just doesn't show up for his own son's operation and kind of acts apathetic about it, like, oh, it's just out of my hands. So I have the story broken into beginning, middle, and end. Do you guys have anything that you want to say about like this beginning opening arc? Did you find any of those specific story beats interesting, or I don't know, did it captivate you?
I think the way I played this game was a little disjointed, so I didn't get a lot of the connections to some of the stories. Like I remember, like as I went through it, I remembered some of the characters. Like, oh yeah, that was so and so from a previous mission that I played. But for the most part, because I played, one character, I would play like 2 or 3 missions at a time, and then go to another character. I didn't get the same experience with the story that y'all did. So yeah, I'm really just listening and piecing it together, or at least you're helping me piece it together.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, like I think I ran through CR's first 5 missions before I started playing the game in order, so it kind of like it was disjointed. So I didn't really start piecing stuff together until the back half of the game. So I don't really like. I remember doing. Actually, I think I did like maybe 8 missions before I started playing the game in the proper order. So I remember like I had already done the surgery on Gabriel's son before I did Gabriel's mission to diagnose his son. So like some of that stuff I had missed some of that context.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm more solid on the very end. Back. Well, yeah, the middle and back, but especially the last 14, like the ones that me and you did, but not so much on the leading up stuff. I think I have a better grasp on the overall, like that big story part, and not the stuff leading up to it.
Do you think the game would have benefited from like being structured in like a sequential way versus like giving you the option to like kind of go through things as you wanted to?
I like having the option because that at least gives you the option of just completely, like, if you don't like Tomoe, you don't have to play it. Well, if you want to get the last story, you have to play as her, but,
I am with Dante, but I wish they showed the game the story way as the priority versus just character. I don't know. Like I'm with Dante that I think that it let the player choose, but I kind of wish that they had displayed the game the other way better, or like, you know, I don't know how to describe it.
I get what you're saying, but I felt like maybe because I've seen it before in games like Dead or Alive 5 of all games had the exact same like horizontal story bars, and there was a little meme where it's like same time that would show up after every cutscene where it was like, okay, this happened at the same time. But I liked how they had the rows, and I could just kind of look at it and tell like, oh, this is what this means.
Sure. I was trying to think like in Mortal Kombat. I'm pretty sure you just hop from character to character. I think.
Yeah, like maybe they could very easily just have a sequential mode or something like that, and just you hit A. And then,
yeah, like maybe like a quick play versus a story mode or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So, go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't think you lose any like.
I don't know, man, because like this story, in my opinion, like I love this game's story, and I think they do an amazing job of interweaving the different doctors, and like you actually get to see the entire medical process a lot of the time. So
I agree, but like I don't think it doesn't pay off if you don't play the last 14 missions. I feel like.
I think it mostly does. Like you definitely need the last 14 missions to finish the story objectively, like,
and that's what I mean. It's like I feel like the characters, like you get like a good point with the characters, but I feel like it kind of ends on like a cliffhanger. So I feel like you absolutely need those 14 missions.
I mean, I agree, but like if you're just the person that wants to, like, oh, I want to play as these characters and I don't really care about the story or whatever.
Yeah,
I like that they give you the option
for sure.
But yeah, I definitely get what you're saying, and I think just having a sequential story or like take me from beginning to end type of story thing would have been a nice touch. Let's go ahead and hop into the middle area. So middle starts with Naomi investigating Veronica Cage's death, who the main takeaway you need from this is she has discolored bones when you're doing the autopsy, and it's just an unidentifiable disease, and that's the first time it pops up. Around that same time, Tomoe is summoned to Japan, where perhaps the most amazing thing happens. Like, she's set to be the successor for her bloodline or whatever, or her heritage, and take over the throne. But in the middle of that, you find out her father's kind of ill, and he's big, strong dude. And he just kind of keels over, and you're with your boss at that time, and she's like, we need to open him up immediately. Here's a scalpel. She stabs him with a scalpel, and that thing just breaks. Just straight up breaks on this man's washboard abs. So then Hanzo, your assistant, he's butler. Like, I got you. Brings out the sword, makes an incision that way.
This man pulls out a katana and cuts your dad open for you.
Man.
So good. It's so good.
It's so good. It's so good.
He's probably like my favorite non-main character of the game. Hanzo.
He's definitely
because I think
cool
he
one.
bodies the ninjas like when they first run up on you. He like beats up all your dad's ninjas.
So you save your father, and you also get his blessing to be independent. So essentially, you leave Japan as Tomoe, and around this time, Maria starts becoming overwhelmed with her work, and she starts seeing the ghost that I mentioned earlier. And that's kind of like a story beat that we'll get into later. Gabriel diagnoses his son with Werner syndrome. So he's finally starting to, I guess, get a little bit closer to his son and open up. That's kind of his character arc, so that's why I mentioned that. Shortly after that, there's an incident in the mall with Hank, where him and Claire are walking around. Also, let me go ahead and say, Trevor and Greg, if you guys want to just not listen to this, I completely understand, because we are kind of getting into like spoiler territory for you guys, so it won't be like too big of a thing if you guys just, I don't know how sensitive you are to spoilers.
Yeah, if somebody wants to just like post a message in here when you're done with it. Then I'll put my earphone back in.
Sounds cool. So yeah. So there's an incident at the mall with Hank where him and Claire, the person he saved after she tried to commit suicide, they're walking around. There's a active shooter at the mall, and I thought this was kind of an interesting thing that isn't really talked about in games very much. And then two, I thought it was specifically poignant since the game takes place in America and they decided to have an active shooter incident. But essentially, Claire gets shot and you think she's dead. Hank confronts the shooter and ends up getting shot himself while he's trying to talk him out of hurting anybody else. Shooter ends up jumping over the ledge because they're on the second level of the mall. And Hank goes down there with gunshot wounds and saves this man. And you save him. You find out that Claire actually isn't dead. She just, passed out from blood loss or whatever. And that's kind of like his big character incident thing. After that, you get into the Raging Bomber incident, which essentially there's a person going around taking out celebrities with these remote bombs. And as Naomi, you're trying to figure out who exactly is this person who's sending these bombs to multiple victims. So this is the first time in the game where you're... Actually, no, it's the second time in the game where you have multiple victims with her. But essentially, you get close to figuring out who it is, but they're one step ahead of you. They send you a package. They actually hand deliver you a package, and you open it. There's a teddy bear inside. Once you pick up the teddy bear, you notice there's a little bit of like gun residue or some black powder on it, and that's when you know from the previous victims that, oh, this is a bomb. Since it's a teddy bear and there's a girl that you're kind of like the adoptive mom of around, she actually picks up the teddy bear, gets really injured by the bomb. CSR at that point is supposed to go back to prison, but they wheel in Alyssa, who is a child that just got injured by this bomb, and they're like, yo, you're the only person that can save her. So essentially, all of the other main doctors are giving you cover to protect you from the police as they're trying to hunt you down and put you back in jail as CRS. And you end up operating on Alyssa, taking care of her, and afterwards, CR is able to go back to jail, and he's kind of at peace with himself, it seems like. After that, you have the second mall incident where you're at the mall with Gabe, Tomoe, and Maria, and I forget exactly why it happens, but a bus just drives through a mall. And in the process, Gabe gets trapped under all this rubble. Tomoe uses her endoscope to locate victims in the rubble, and Maria also responds to a lot of the people that got injured there. So, any thoughts on the middle section of this game? Marcus?
I dug this part of the game. Obviously the Mad Bomber stuff was some of the standout stuff for me. With Naomi, I did enjoy this mission with Maria. This was also one of my least favorite missions for Tomoe, so this was like the hot spot for all of those things.
Yeah, that's the one where you had to find the people, I'm guessing.
Yeah, find the people in that wreckage and everything. And this was like,
Yep.
I think the second one that was a maze. I think the first one was when you were in your dad's lungs, I feel like.
Yeah,
so this was the first. This was the next branching one, and I feel like this one was the one that had the timer. I think the 10-minute timer.
12-minute, yep.
Yeah. But I mean, I story wise, I was digging what was going on at this point, though. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm going to quickly go over the last part. I know like two of our people can't speak to it, and we can just do a really quick kind of what you thought overall at the end. So, yeah. Essentially, a lady comes off of a train, and she starts coughing up blood, and immediately after that, all the people around her start falling down with this illness, and this was known as the Patient Zero incident. And this happened in Portland, and the government has determined, hey, this is real bad. This is a pandemic. what we're going to do is just quarantine everybody in Portland and just kind of accept Portland as a loss and just move on with the world, essentially. Like, they're just expecting everybody in Portland to die and just kind of cover it up from there. So at that time, Gabe, he has to diagnose a soldier who came down with the virus, and he determines that it's a hemorrhagic fever. From that, Naomi is able to examine some bones that the military had essentially been taken care of for the past couple of years. And she was able to determine the origins of the hemorrhagic fever and this pandemic in general, which directly ties into CRSO1's past. So CRSO1 was just a normal kid with parents, and his parents died. He got an adoptive father who went by the name of Sart, last name Sart, who was very obsessed with coming up with a panacea, which is essentially an all cure. In the process, he finds a girl who is a girl that Maria is seeing as a ghost a lot. And she has a special blood that just, it's super strong at just fighting off any type of viruses and stuff. So he starts kind of messing around with her blood, but in the process finds out that her blood is so strong that it is a virus in itself. And
also, he's adopted her too. So like,
yeah, he also adopts Rosalia Rossellini.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the process, Sart accidentally kind of creates a super virus messing around with her blood and gets CR convicted over it, more or less. And also, timeline thing. First thing that happened was he got sick from her blood, and the blood is known to make the patients go crazy. So like all of Naomi's patients after the second one, they are infected with Rosalia, which means they have discolored bones. And in the process, they have extreme violence, they have extreme hallucinations, visions, all that stuff. So Sart starts to get that from his infection, pretty much gets mad at Rosalia and realizes like she's more of a threat than a potential cure, kills her. And not too long after that, he causes the incident that gets CR in jail, and that's how he gets locked up. In the process, you figure out that Rosalia should be in Mexico, so Maria and Naomi go to Mexico, and Naomi investigates the crime scene. Essentially, you find Rosalia's body, which is adipocere, which means essentially it's become like, it's preserved because it's become waxified, essentially. And through a lot of exposition, you find out that she was shot in this field. These Asclepias, which is a flower type that's normally red, has turned blue because her blood spilled into the flowers. And these specific butterflies, these monarch butterflies that you saw at the very beginning of the game, they have been pollinating these flowers and like feeding off of the flowers, and they are spreading her blood throughout the world, essentially. And due to their migration pattern, they hit Portland first, but they're eventually going to hit the entirety of the United States. So you clip up the flowers, you develop an antibody, you essentially end the pandemic, which, like, I love this game. I wouldn't have thought about it twice back in 2010, but like, oh, we got these flowers, we can make a vaccine. Well, now the pandemic's over.
Yep.
No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
It being an airborne virus.
Yeah. So essentially you end the pandemic, and then the last thing you do, Naomi starts passing out like right after you cure everybody, and you find out that the virus is combined with her terminal illness, and CR decides to operate on her, and essentially he removes the mutated version of the Rosalia virus combined with her terminal illness, and she's actually like potentially fully cured with a chance of relapse. And that's really where the game ends. So let me type spoilers over into the chat so people know to come back. Okay, and now I just want to spend the last like 10 minutes just super quickly wrapping up just final thoughts on stuff. So we talked about Cass. What did you guys think about did you guys like the setting of the game? Did you guys like that it was rooted in reality and was kind of like tonally pretty serious most of the time, or realistic?
I think I did. I like that it was like recognizable as, you know, the United States. It took place in like, I think Seattle, right? Or like
Yeah,
Oregon.
Seattle, Portland.
I think it was Portland. But
Mhm.
I like that it was realistic because like I feel like if it was like for funsies or like, I mean, there was some supernatural things, but I felt like
Mhm.
if it was more that way, I don't know if I would have enjoyed.
That is very much most of the Trauma Center series. Like, I forget if New Blood does that, but Trauma Center 1 and 2, it's all about eliminating a virus called guilt. And there's like Sin 1, Sin 2. And it's very it's like heavy handed religious
Yeah,
imagery. Sorry.
I think I preferred it being realistic because I think I would not have liked Gabriel's if it wasn't.
Um, what do you guys think about the art style and the cutscenes? Did you like how the story was portrayed? Did you like the art of the characters?
Yeah, I think I talked to you about this when you were streaming, but or I don't know if I said it there, if I said it in chat, but I feel like I get heavy like Persona vibes from like the character art and like the soundtrack. Like it really reminds me of that a lot.
So the lead artist for this game is actually like a big artist for Persona, if I'm looking at IMDb right. Like
That makes a lot of sense then.
he did Persona 3, and then he does a lot of the Shin Megami Tenseis, looks like. See. Music. I've gotten a lot of comments about music. Bangers, right?
Yeah, music's good. Yeah.
I really, really, really like that intro track. The menu music track.
The
I
dun dun
really,
dun 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 dun
yeah,
dun.
it gave me Catherine vibes, honestly. And I did like the more serious music that was going on during like the not the interrogation, the stuff with Naomi when she was like going through the evidence and everything. There was a comment that I read in one review that somebody said something about the music being very jaunty and everything during like traumatic moments, but I couldn't recall when that happened, but somebody did say like there was some funny moments where like the music didn't match what was going on, but I couldn't think of any.
And okay. I pretty much got a pretty good read on how everybody feels about the story. I think everybody's mostly positive with some holdups about like the ordering of certain things. So I feel good on that. So my last two big questions are do you have any thoughts of one revisiting previous games in the series, or would you be interested in them continuing the series?
Well, go ahead, Trevor. You got it.
I'd definitely be down if they continued it because I'd like to see what they do on the Switch or even other consoles actually, because like Trauma Center was on different consoles, wasn't it? It was on like handheld.
Well, the thing is, now that you mention it, like it is a Nintendo exclusive series because you have Trauma Center 1 and 2 on the DS. You have Second Opinion, which is a port of 1 on the Wii, and then you also have New Blood on the Wii. And then you have Trauma Team. That's the entirety of the series.
So yeah, it'd just be interesting to see how they keep up with, the gaming technology now, since this game really lends itself well, like the gameplay lends itself very well to the Wii controls.
Trevor Gregg or Marcus Gregg.
I don't know if I would be willing to go back to the previous games because I feel like I might. I don't know. Like for whatever reason in my mind, I kind of envision not liking the other versions or the older games just because like I feel like maybe this one is like the most like fleshed out one.
Mhm.
But I would definitely be down to check out like a new iteration. You know, if they decide to ever like, make a new version, I'd
Gotcha.
definitely check it out.
One thing I will say is this game is leaps and bounds easier than any other game in the series. The like probably 4 or 5 surgeries into Trauma Center 1 is equivalent to some of the stuff you're doing in near the end game with CR and stuff like that. So they definitely toned down the difficulty, at least on regular mode. Like Specialist is a completely different story, but
Is it easier because you're playing it on a DS or 3DS versus on the Wii, or?
no, it's like if you play Second Opinion, that game is hard. That's the one I had to dump down to easy.
Gotcha.
Granted, I'm also a lefty that plays with the Wii remote in the right hand, so some of that precision stuff I just naturally cannot do as fast.
Gotcha. I'm with Greg. I don't think I would want to go back to the game, but more so because from what I read, it was more so it was surgery heavy, and like the my favorite parts about this game were like the investigation. Like the whether it being the Naomi stuff and with the forensics or Gabriel with the diagnostics. So like I don't think that these previous games have that stuff in it. So like the main thing that I enjoyed in this game is not in the earlier versions. And I also like the fact that this is more grounded in reality versus the spiritual and magical and whatever woo woo you want to call in the previous games were. So hearing that about the previous games, I'm not really interested in them, but I would be interested in a Trauma Team 2. Like I think I'm like if we're saying Trauma Center is the old style and the Trauma Team is the definitely like the more grounded in reality and playing different play styles and everything, I would be definitely interested if they were to continue on in the Trauma Team franchise.
The one thing, New Blood might be a little bit less supernatural, but it's hard for me to say. But most of the other ones are definitely more rooted in fake viruses and stuff. Anyway, last thing, great game, great experience, Trevor.
That sounded like a loaded question. Didn't Marcus normally say
It's up
good
to
game,
you.
good experience?
No problem. Hey man, you do you.
No, I'm just kidding. Great game, great experience.
You know, you scared me coming into this because you were like, "Oh, I'm ready for some hot takes," and it's been pretty.
I mean,
sensible.
that is a hot
I feel
take
like.
for me to like a game from Dante.
Fair enough. Fair
No,
enough.
I thoroughly enjoyed this game.
Greg, great game, great experience.
Yeah, I'll say great game, great experience.
Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with them. Great game, great experience. I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I'm interested in other Atlas games, honestly, now, because like I'm like, dang, like the two games of theirs that that we played for the podcast, this and Catherine, I've thoroughly enjoyed, and there was a lot of things that
What if I told you they have full games of Naomi and Gabriel?
of what
Like
the
high budget?
Where they
characters, the characters
Like-
or their gameplay.
Just general visual novel style. Like Persona is most like there is an RPG and the RPG there is good, but people go to Persona for social links and like what if you combined Mass Effect with this? Is what I'm trying to say.
Say less. Can I play it on Switch?
You can play Scramble on Switch. It's all right.
Well, yeah. But yeah,
Actually-
I enjoyed this game. I had two questions I wanted to ask people, but
I'm also going to say great game, great experience, and go on to your
yeah,
questions.
This is unanimous. This is the first time we've had unanimous great game, great experience across the board. That's what's up.
And it's a Trevor.
Better be pretty high on everybody's list at the end of the.
And it's a Trevor game. Okay.
And yeah. Okay, so mine. We can try to go through these quick because we've been running hella long. Worth it though. Could you guys rank the characters in regards to their gameplay? So who you enjoyed the most versus the least? If you've played everybody, if you haven't played everybody or haven't seen what you have seen, we'll say how about that. So like for me, my absolute favorite was Gabriel. Then my next favorite was probably Maria. Then Naomi. Then Hank. Then CR. And then last was Tomoe. In regards to gameplay.
Go ahead.
I'll go with Gabriel at number 1. Naomi. Maria. CS. Hank. And I'll just say, yeah, Tomoe. I really didn't want to put it on the list, but I'll put it on there.
Yeah.
All right. So I just have to put them in pool. So we're gonna do A tier is pretty much CR. We've got Maria. We've got Gabriel. And then I would say B tier is, you know what? I have had such a change of heart. So I'm going to do Naomi and Tomoe there, and then I'd probably put Hank at C.
Okay. And Greg?
So I think I would put Gabriel as the best, Naomi second, Maria third, CR fourth, Hank fifth, and Tomoe last.
Gotcha.
Hank, same as me.
Now, do the same thing, but in regards to their story. So I know this will be difficult for you, Greg, because you hadn't seen everybody. So just what you had seen. For me, my favorite story, like character arc, I guess I should say character arc. Probably Tomoe, and then Naomi, then Gabriel, then CR, then Maria, then Hank.
So are we on their character or on their story?
I was saying their character arcs from where they started to where they ended.
Okay.
And just how enjoyable, how much you enjoyed it. So not necessarily
fair. I get what you're saying. I think CR had a really good story. Naomi's story is also very good. Tomoe and Gabriel, like Gabriel doesn't get as much development as I'd want him to, but he's still pretty good. So I put him right under Tomoe. Then I'd say Hank. I like the character. Like, I really like Claire. I thought Claire is a really cool character.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of like separate of Hank. And, well, I mean, it's part of his character, but at the same time. Yeah. Then last would probably be Maria. Like, not that I disliked Maria, she didn't grow that much.
Yeah.
They even comment on that at the end.
Side note, one of my favorite things about Hank was when he was in his Free Eagle or his superhero form or whatever, the newspaper in world was called the Daily Trauma. So good. So good. Who next?
I'll do CR, Naomi, who else? Gabriel, Maria, and then Hank. And I never got too far into Tomoe's story, so I don't think I'll rank her.
Greg?
So I think for me it would be Maria, CR, Gabriel. I didn't get far enough into Naomi, so I can't really speak to that or Tomoe. But I mean, I would probably say well, yeah, I won't rank Naomi because I didn't give. Same thing with Tomoe. So I'll say, yeah, just Maria, CR, Hank, and then Gabriel.
Gotcha. And my last question is, what was your least favorite surgery? Not surgery, but like motion or like thing you had to do. And
Moving with Tomoe. Easily the worst.
You just being facetious now.
Not that, like, not that one, not that one. Like I think my least favorite was doing the defibrillator.
Oh, pushing
Actually,
forward
no, I take that back. It was definitely hammering the pin. Hammering anything was my least favorite thing.
That was so simple, though.
Okay, not counting Tomoe. I posted a picture of it in our Facebook group.
The Hank, the circuit, the saw.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
Saw was pretty bad. I think the thing that ticked me off the most was, and this is a really pet, like, it's definitely not the worst motion in the game, but when I was going for the S ranks, Maria, like, you have to get a lot of cools if you actually want to get it. And I thought I was taping things perfectly, but I could not for the life of me figure out what exactly.
God. Yes. The one where you had to
so
like
mad.
pull the bandage when you're trying to wrap their arm or something.
Not even that. No, I'm just talking about like you clear the blood clot, then you put on the little surgical whatever, and then you put the vial liquid on it.
Yeah.
And then you just have to use the little tape thing, like the tool tape.
That one wasn't that hard. It was the one when you would have to set somebody's broken limb and then put the splint on, and then you had to wrap their arm with the tape for whatever reason. Yeah, because you had to pull the tape in an arc, and it would never lock on.
If you just make little circular motions with your hand, you'll do it in like half of a second.
So maybe I'm thinking of the wrong thing. There was one where you had to like do tape over their. Maybe it was the.
Oh, I know. So, are you talking about the one with the box cutter where you have to seal it because and you have to use like this really thin tape?
It does like a little arc, and you have to like drag it from one circle in a little arc to the other side.
I know what you're talking about.
And it never locked. It never locked for me.
So what you have to do there, and I did the same thing. So you pull it over to one side. It says okay. Then you pull it back over to the other side, and you have to let go of it while it's in the little circle there. I thought you just had to get it over to the other side.
Yeah, and so I kept, like, every time it was doing that, I think it was a Maria thing, every time it was just like, holy crap, I'm, like, stuck right here. I can't figure this thing out.
Yeah, that one takes a while, but, oh my gosh, it's literally brain dead after you know, like, this is what they want, and they just don't communicate it well.
Yeah. Did you have one, Trevor? Or Greg, besides the controlling Tomoe?
No, I think that's really it.
Oh, there was one too with Hank. Sometimes when you were drilling and you were drilling down a long bone, and like the drill would just get hella fast, and I would just get off course, and I would just tear up somebody's leg. Like, man, some of the things I did with Hank, like people would be worse off.
And then the commentary, like, what are you doing? Are you trying to kill him?
Yeah, like, are you trying to break his other leg? Yeah.
I didn't like the chisel as Hank.
I didn't mind that one. The ones where you had to cut off like the tumor in pieces was always tricky, and then also the one I don't remember whose it was. It was either CR's or Hank's, where it was like a later one. So I think maybe only me and you saw Dante, but there was like a time where you had to do it in a certain amount of time before, or otherwise you'd have to start over.
Right, you're talking about where you had to cut out that one tumor. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
that covers everything for me, at least.
Any other questions? Any other comments people want to make? I guess so. Are you gonna finish the game, Greg?
Yeah, I'm planning on it.
And what about you, Trevor?
Oh yeah,
you
definitely.
Finish the game? Okay. So yeah, you guys, let us know what you think about the last 14 missions. Like once you beat everybody's main missions, then you get like 14 additional missions, and they're like in order of sequential order. So I'll be interested to hear, because that's where you get the I feel like the big finale of the game. Where can people find you at, Trevor?
You can find me on the internet, and lately I've been playing Pokemon Unite, so you can find me on there at Lyric Unsung.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Where can people find you at, Greg?
You can find me on Twitter at Boombox Hero. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/MacNegro with a 0 instead of O at the end. And I've actually been streaming lately, so just Street Fighter still, but I might try and stream me finishing up this game.
You should. I want to see how bad you
It's
are.
quality
with Tomoe.
content. I've enjoyed your streams.
Yeah, might do that.
I want to see you run into the walls and with Tomoe.
I got you with those hot Tomoe tips. I will walk you through it.
And where can people find you at, Dante?
People can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/WakenCloud. Finishing up a couple games right now. Right, the only big game that I'm playing at the moment is Majora's Mask, but I do have some pretty interesting ones coming up in the future.
High key, or not high key, but are you guys planning on streaming our October game? Because I feel like that would be a good game to stream.
Yeah, maybe.
I was planning on getting it on Switch, but if I get it on a different platform, I may just stream it.
It'd be interesting to. I'd watch you guys, because I'm like, man, I was talking to somebody about it, and I was like, I don't know how spooky this game is going to be. It'd be nice to be able to, like, at the very least, be able to watch one of your guys' playthrough if I can't make it through. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. So
Truth be told, I was shocked that you voted for it, but
I mean, I don't
mistakes
know.
were made.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to try it. You know, like I'd heard about the game, and I was like, this would be able to give me, you know, like some more understanding. And so then I can't say hot takes like the fifth game is like my second favorite one. So yeah, but anyways, you can find me on Facebook and Twitter at Potato Salad. If you like tuning in to Miss Checkpoints, even when we have these long ass games, not long ass games, long ass episodes, to find out about hidden gems, cult classic, indie games, then share us with your friends, family, and the Not Shitty subreddit communities you're in. Comment on our Facebook page, add us on Twitter, leave us a review, preferably 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, so we can appear higher in the leisure category. Yeah, so be on the lookout. Maybe Greg will be streaming Trauma Team. Maybe Dante, Greg, or Trevor will be streaming Resident Evil HD Remaster this month. So be on the lookout for that. And with that, we are Miss Checkpoints, and we're out.